Chapter 1222 Teacher loves you, Zhongxian frowned. The brain was the command center of a body. Even if vicious body was divided into many parts at the moment, the authority that the brain had over the other body parts still remained. In other words, even if the vicious in the Book of Heaven's path was stronger than the other vicious, it would still have no choice but to submit to it. Furthermore, while the fighting prowess that the brain wielded was severely limited, the sheer amount of knowledge it retained granted it many other means, which made it a frightening opponent to go against. For one, it was due to the means that the other vicious possessed that allowed him to make the Qingtian Emperor his subordinate, control so many soulless metal humanoids and puppets simultaneously, and cast soul arts with superior proficiency that could nab even Zhongxian's soul. Fortunately, while Zhongxian had been powerless against the other vicious soul-nabbing secret art previously, the advancement of his cultivation to embryonic soul realm pinnacle had granted him the strength to withstand the technique, making it impossible for the other party to kill him with the soul-nabbing secret art anymore. Nevertheless, that did not mean to say that the other vicious did not have any other means that he could use against him. After all, how could an old monster who had rivaled Kongshu in his peak possibly only know the soul-nabbing secret art? Zhongxian hesitated for a moment before asking the vicious in the Book of Heaven's path, "Let me confirm again, you won't be able to defeat him in a direct encounter?" "That's right. Even if he's weaker than me, I don't think that I'll be able to disobey the commands of the brain blatantly. In a direct encounter, he'll be able to control me easily. The only time I will stand a chance against him is when he's unconscious. As long as I can erase his consciousness and replace it with mine while he's out, I'll be able to possess him," Vicious replied. "Unconscious?" A helpless smile surfaced on Zhongxian's lips. How could that be possible? The other party's soul was so strong that it could even drag his massive soul into a black hole. How could he possibly knock a soul that powerful unconscious? That was an impossible mission. Who? Since the two of them had conversed directly with their souls, even though it seemed like they had chatted for some time, in truth, only half a breath had passed so far. Back in the hall, making use of the opportunity while Zhongxian's clone was preoccupied, the other three puppets swiftly dashed forward to encircle Zhongxian. One of them raised its fist and flung it forcefully toward him. Golden Origin Cauldron. Knowing that there was no way he could defend against three puppets with his current strength, Zhongxian bellowed loudly, and the Golden Origin Cauldron immediately appeared before him. It swiftly charged forward with its bottom facing a puppet. Pang! The fist collided with the Golden Origin Cauldron's bottom, and with a deep chime, the puppet was forced to retreat several steps back. The reason the Golden Origin Cauldron had not been a match for the Qingtian Emperor was due to the superior combat skills that the latter possessed. With his opponent being a puppet that was only capable of relying on its brute strength this time around, the Golden Origin Cauldron's outstanding defense granted it a huge advantage in the battle. Nevertheless, the puppet was not weak. The both of them fought on equal grounds with one another, but it seemed like the Golden Origin Cauldron currently held the upper hand. However, before Zhongxian could ease up, the remaining two puppets charged at him. Hualala! Overwhelming auras gushed out from the two puppets, creating a powerful gale in the area. It felt as if a devastating storm was brewing within the hall, preparing to bring a catastrophe upon those present. In face of such strength, Zhongxian's face paled. He swiftly pointed forward and exclaimed, "That person over there is the real Zhongxian, so go for him. I mean, just look at how powerful he is." Zhongxian's clone. However, the two puppets seemed to remain unconvinced. They continued charging toward Zhongxian furiously, launching attack after attack. Dodging their attacks in a fluster, Zhongxian exclaimed desperately, "I am really just the clone. Have you ever seen a clone more powerful than the main body before?" Thinking that there was some logic in those words, one of the puppets hesitated for a moment before heading over toward Zhongxian's clone, collaborating with the previous puppet to launch a barrage of devastating attacks. It did not take long before the head of the Zhongxian's clone was flattened once more. Zhongxian's clone was truly on the verge of tears. The main bodies of the other clones were powerful and selfless, diving unhesitatingly into danger to uphold their beliefs. On the other hand, his main body. Heavens, just what kind of crime did he commit in his previous life to be born to such a main body? But thinking back again, It seemed like he had done the same thing to the main body back at the Qiu Wu Palace, so he did not have any right to complain. With a weary heart, Zhongshen's clone could only swallow his frustrations and try his best to deal with the two puppets. Nevertheless, it did not take long for several dents to appear all over his body. It was fortunate that he was forged out of the Nine Hearts Lotus, or else he would have really lost his life there and then. Just as Zhongshen's clone was about to explode from frustration, the main body suddenly sent a telepathic message to him. "Clone, try to stall those two puppets for the time being. I'll come and help you as soon as I get rid of this one." "Fine." Hearing that his main body was not intentionally abandoning him, the stifling sensation that Zhongshen's clone felt in his chest finally alleviated slightly. Boom boom boom. Despite abandoning his defense altogether and devoting his full strength to offense, Zhongshen's clone only barely managed to rival the two clones. "Interesting." The voice of the other Vicious echoed eerily in the hall. "But regardless of which of you is the main body and the clone, none of you will get out of here today." He had not expected Zhongshen's clone to wield such strength, fighting on equal terms with two puppets. With a cold harumph, he was just about to continue speaking when he suddenly froze. "Why you? What are you doing? Kill him." Sensing the anxiety in the other Vicious voice, Zhongshen's clone was bewildered. He quickly forced back the two puppets with two powerful punches before hurriedly turning a glance to his main body. And then, dumbfounded. At some point in time, the puppet that had been chasing after his main body mercilessly, seeming as if it would not rest until it butchered the latter, was suddenly kneeling before his main body with a look of reverence on its face. On the other hand, his main body seemed to be saying something that caused the puppet to tremble uncontrollably in excitement. "The heck?" Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Zhongshen's clone widened its eyes in shock. It had fought so desperately that its head had even been flattened multiple times throughout the course of the battle, and it did not even manage to scratch his enemy. Yet, his main body had made the puppet willingly kneel down to him just by uttering a few words. They originated from the same soul, so how could there be such a huge gap between them? Overwhelmed by frenzy, Zhongshen's clone focused its hearing to find out just what words of sorcery the main body was saying, only to hear some unexpected words. "Go. Remember, your teacher loves you." Right after those words were spoken, the puppet that had been chasing his main body around suddenly rushed straight for him. "I." Horrified, Zhongshen's clone immediately began to run away, only to see the puppet charging past him to clash with one of the puppets it had been dealing with. Peng 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 peng. The two puppets were equally matched, and it did not seem any one of them would emerge victorious anytime soon. The mouth of Zhongshen's clone twitched upon seeing that sight. Taking a deep breath, it was just about to deal with the other remaining puppet when the main body suddenly appeared before it. With a melodious tone, the main body began speaking. "Born as a puppet, doomed to obey the commands of others for life. What a tragic fate it is, don't you think? Come, listen to me." It did not take long before that puppet knelt earnestly before his main body as well. "Go." With a shout from the main body, the puppet immediately charged for the puppet that was currently clashing with the Golden Origin Cauldron. Ignoring his shocked clone, Zhongshen heaved a sigh of relief. Phew, it's done. Having comprehended the heart of a teacher, the effectiveness of his impartation of heavens will had expanded from just humans to beasts and artifacts as well. In fact, he had even managed to get Zhong Zhouxiao's weapons to acknowledge him as their teacher before. Considering that these puppets had their own spirits as well, naturally, it was also possible for him to win them over with his impartation of heaven's will. "This move of yours sure is convenient. With this, you will be able to get any puppet to submit to you without even lifting a finger," Zhongshen's clone remarked in awe. Zhongshen turned to his clone and said, "Are you interested in it? If you want to learn it, I can teach you." The face of Zhongshen's clone reddened in exasperation. "We are both the same person. Is there really a need for you to pose before me? It's just impartation of heaven's will. Who doesn't know how to do that?" After saying those words, Zhongshen's clone charged up to one of the unconverted puppets and reached out, as if a holy priest offering a hand to salvation. Born as a puppet, doomed to obey the commands of others for life. What a tragic fate it is, don't you think? Come, listen to me. Peng. His head was flattened with a forceful punch. I. Zhong Xian's clone was crazed. The same person saying the same words, the puppets had kneeled right after hearing them from his main body, but when he spoke them, he ended up being pummeled instead. Are you all bullying me because I'm a clone? This is discrimination. Seeing his clone's state, Zhong Xian shook his head and sighed deeply. Geez. Ultimately, his clone had also come from his soul as well. However, when would his clone learn to be as humble and low profile as he was? To be thinking of how he could pose before others every single day, did he really have nothing better to do? Forget it, I should try to find Vicious first. Ignoring the puppets and his clone, Zhong Xian activated his Eye of Insight and began scanning the hall. However, other than the 4 puppets, there did not seem to be anything of note within the hall. There must be some kind of mechanism in here. Recalling how there were mechanisms in the previous halls he had been through, Zhong Xian was just about to search for the one within the hall more thoroughly when Vicious' furious voice suddenly erupted. Using your heart of a teacher and the impartation of heaven's will to beguile my puppets, you really have a sharp tongue, just like Kongsha. However, given how many times I have clashed with Kongsha before, do you think that I would be completely unprepared for this? What? Zhong Xian narrowed his eyes. He quickly turned around, only to see that the 2 puppets he had just beguiled earlier abruptly shuddering intensely before their heads burst with a resounding explosion. Putong. Their headless bodies fell limply onto the ground. You left another trick within them? Zhong Xian's face darkened. As expected of Vicious, he was indeed prepared for all kinds of situation. Anticipating the possible betrayal of his subordinates, he had left a trick in them so that he could kill them whenever he wanted. Do you think that I would have been able to survive so long without at least this much brainpower? Vicious sneered coldly. Considering that his enemy was Kongsha, if he did not even have this much wariness in him, he would have been killed by the master teacher Pavilion many times over. In the face of such a situation, Zhong Xian clenched his fists tightly. Killing the puppets that he had just beguiled did not just cost him 2 powerful soldiers, more importantly, it also served as a warning against those who intended to betray Vicious. As powerful as the heart of a teacher paired with the impartation of heaven's will was, it was not exactly brainwashing. It served to win others over by merit, not through force. The spirits of the puppets had seen how their companions were killed right before their eyes, which caused their wills to instinctively reject Zhong Xian's teachings out of fear of death. Given so, it would be nigh impossible for Zhong Xian to win them over. Boom. At this moment, the 2 remaining puppets suddenly charged at Zhong Xian even more frenziedly than before. The deaths of their companions had left them feeling as if there was an invisible noose around their necks, and they realized that they could very well be killed by Vicious if they failed to kill the young man before their eyes. Against the frenzied assault of the duo, even Zhong Xian's clone and the Golden Origin Cauldron ended up being forced back. The other Vicious chuckled gleefully. Let's see how well you will cope this time around. Cope? There's no need for that at all. Zhong Xian replied casually. No need for that. Indeed. There's really no need to go through so much trouble just to deal with those puppets. Shrugging leisurely, Zhong Xian flicked his wrist, and Demonair and Demon Bee appeared before his eyes. He had moved these inner demons into the myriad ant-hive nest prior to entering the ghost cavern. Go, possess those 2 puppets. Yes, teacher. Demonair and Demon Bee morphed into 2 clouds of black mist and flew over to shroud the puppets. Who? The intangible nature of inner demons made it impossible for physical might to phase them, and soul-wise, considering how even cultivators would easily succumb to their onslaught, how could mere puppets possibly withstand their assault? In the blink of an eye, they had already dived into the glabelly of the puppets. Gudong. Gudong. As soon as the inner demons entered the puppets' bodies, the 2 puppets staggered weakly for a moment before collapsing to the ground. You! Inner demons! Vicious was crazed. He was the one who had conjured those inner demons back then. Who would have thought that the other party would actually use those inner demons against him at this crucial moment? Indeed. While these inner demons are unable to destroy the spirits of the puppets and gain control of their bodies, they are still more than capable of incapacitating them for a short period of time, rendering them powerless. Zhong Xian chuckled softly. Inner demons could confuse an individual's mind, robbing them of their fighting ability. Even though Demonaire and Demon Bee were unable to effectively gain control of the puppets, they were still able to keep them busy for some time. Excellent. Excellent. I concede that you are indeed a formidable opponent, but while you might be able to stop 2 of my puppets, will you be able to stop this many of them simultaneously? With his voice trembling with rage, Vicious roared angrily, following which, a mechanism suddenly whirred into action, and a door opened. Following which, more than 100 puppets dashed into the hall simultaneously. The face of Zhongxian's clone paled as it widened its eyes in disbelief. There are so many of them. On the other hand, the Golden Origin Cauldron cowered backward in fear. If he could have cowered beneath his lid, he definitely would have done so at this very moment. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Vicious manic laughter echoed resoundingly in the hall. I have more than 100 puppets here. Do you have enough inner demons to incapacitate every last one of them? But Vicious glee did not last long. The young man shook his head and replied calmly, You are in luck. I happen to have enough. Chapter 1223 Celestial Designer Lok Hu La. Right after Zhongxian said those words, a dark mist abruptly burst forth from him. In the blink of an eye, a massive group of inner demons had rushed into the surroundings. There was more than 100 of them. Back then, in the Combat Master Hall's Heart Division, Kang Shu's fragmented soul hidden within his body had resulted in the generation of a huge army of inner demons in the Trial of Inner Demons, and Kang Shu had attempted to use them to kill him. Eventually, he had managed to tame those inner demons, and he had kept them inside a jade bottle ever since then. TZZZZZZZZZ. The 100 or so inner demons immediately rushed for the puppets. This is mine, don't you dare snatch it from me. Hey, I was the one who saw it first. I am Demon C, and his Demon D. We're inner demons who were personally named by our teacher. Nameless small fries like the rest of you should know your own place and go to the back of the queue. Upon seeing the huge army of puppets before them, the inner demons immediately charged forward to claim a body for themselves. Before the 100 puppets could even cause a shred of damage, every single one of them was already lying powerlessly on the ground. Why you? Vicious nearly lost his mind. Only he knew how much time, effort, and precious materials he had spent on forging each and every one of those puppets. Those puppets were to become the invincible army that he would command upon his return, and he had been confident that they would easily kill the young man before him. Yet, who could have known that the young man had prepared a hand for this as well, to actually have more than 100 inner demons in your possession? Does your family actually deal in inner demons? You bastards, get up and kill him, Vicious bellowed wrathfully. But plagued by inner demons, the eyes of the puppets were glazed. They remained motionless on the ground, as if lifeless corpses. Reverting back to its usual, imposing presence, the Golden Origin Cauldron stepped forward and spoke confidently. Master, let me smash all of them to smithereens, otherwise, once the puppets struggle free of their inner demons, they will surely pose a threat to us once more. At the same time, it glared down on the puppets on the ground, seemingly wanting to suffocate each and every one of them with its massive bottom. Smash them to smithereens? Zhongxian shook his head. While they are only puppets, they do have their own consciousness. It would truly be a huge pity to kill all of them. Just like the Golden Origin Cauldron, these puppets had spirits of their own. It would have been cruel to massacre over 100 of them just like that. But the Golden Origin Cauldron frowned. Even if they were to spare the puppets, it was not as if the puppets would spare them once they struggled free of the inner demons. Faced with more than 100 leaving Aperture Realm puppets, it would only take moments for them to be pummeled to death. Geez, I guess I have no choice then. Shaking his head, Zhongxian waved his hand grandly with a deeply reluctant look on his face. Voila! All of the puppets lying on the ground were packed into his storage ring. Those puppets were currently in a state of confusion, so they could not resist being pulled into the storage ring at all. Furthermore, as artifacts, they would not suffocate to death in the storage ring either. The Golden Origin Cauldron. Vicious was so choked up that he could not speak a word at all, and he even nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. Those puppets are mine. Mine. This is robbery. How can you steal my possession right before my eyes? You planned for this right from the start, right? Right. Vicious was livid with rage, but there was nothing he could do in the situation. All his puppets had been incapacitated, so he no longer had any subordinates who could possibly stop Zhongxian. Ignoring the speechless Golden Origin Cauldron and clone, as if not feeling the slightest guilt for his actions, Zhongxian remarked leisurely, "I'll have to preach to them later on and have them renounce evil for good. It seems like I have unwittingly made another huge contribution to the Master-Teacher Pavilion." With a few steps, he walked over to the door where the puppets had emerged from and walked in. Once again, there was another flight of stairs leading downward. Just like before, he had his clone lead the way. This time, they did not encounter any danger on the way. Before long, they reached the end of the passageway. "This is a labyrinth?" the Golden Origin Cauldron asked. This time, instead of a vast hall, they were met with countless smaller rooms densely packed together. There were many possible paths to take, just like in a labyrinth. More importantly, when Zhongxian scanned the area with his spiritual perception, he realized that it was not able to reach the end of the labyrinth. It was as if the entire labyrinth stretched across the whole island. What is this supposed to be used for? Zhongxian's clone was bewildered. In fact, even Zhongxian himself was taken aback. He scanned the room with his eye of insight, and he realized that each of the small rooms was forged out of a unique material, making the walls particularly resilient. He could hardly imagine how much it would have cost to build such a gigantic labyrinth. To make a comparison, the cost of crafting these rooms was at least 100 times the price required to forge all the puppets he had encountered earlier. "Are these residences for those puppets?" the Golden Origin Cauldron asked after a moment of contemplation. "Residences? Would 100 puppets require this many residences?" Scanning the area with his spiritual perception, Zhongxian could perceive at least 10,000 rooms. Putting aside the question of if the puppets would require a room for themselves, surely there was no need to construct so many of them. Unable to make sense of the bizarre labyrinth, Zhongxian shook his head as he began heading down one of the paths. "Let's not bother with that for the time being. Make sure to keep your guard up. Don't give Vicious an opportunity to assault you. If it had been anyone else, they would have swiftly lost their way due to the identical rooms everywhere." However, through his eye of insight, Zhongxian was able to vaguely perceive an extremely thin strand of thread in the air. After walking for around 10 minutes, passing by countless rooms in the meantime, they finally arrived before an open stone door, which revealed another passageway that led further downward. Since they had already come this far, the 2 men and 1 cauldron walked into the passageway without any hesitation, heading downward once more. As soon as they reached the end of the passageway, they immediately felt a concentrated burst of killing intent gushing their way, threatening to tear their consciousness into shreds. Having practiced the simplified Heaven's Path soul art, Zhongxian's clone was still able to withstand the overwhelming killing intent. However, the Golden Origin Cauldron shook feebly in the face of the fearsome killing intent, unable to stand against it. Despite having reached leaving Aperture Realm Advanced stage, it was ultimately still a mere spirit and not a soul. Inevitably, its ability to withstand the powerful killing intent of the otherworldly demonic tribe was lacking. "You should return for now." Zhongxian swiftly stowed the Golden Origin Cauldron back into his storage ring before assessing the room before him together with his clone. It was a spacious underground chamber. There was a square box hanging in the middle of the chamber, propped up by 4 thick chains embedded in the wall at the 4 corners. Zhongxian could not tell what kind of material the box was made of, but there was an eerie cold glint reflected off its black exterior. The powerful burst of killing intent had originated from the box. "Vicious is inside." Zhongxian's clone muttered softly. "Very possibly so," Zhongxian replied with a grim frown. The sheer concentration of the killing intent in that previous burst showed that the purity of the bloodline of whatever was sealed within the box had already exceeded that of the Qingtian Emperor. In the Ghost Cavern, the only one who could possibly possess a purer bloodline than the Qingtian Emperor was Vicious. Beneath the black box was an altar that bore a striking resemblance to the one he had used to deal with the Qingtian Emperor earlier, just that it was slightly bigger. There were bizarre inscriptions all over it, and for some reason, there seemed to be an air of desolation shrouding those inscriptions. It felt as if one would be torn in two just by approaching it. Zhongxian's clone picked up a stone and tossed it at the altar. Tz la. Countless sword chi burst forth from the altar, slicing the stone into powdery remains. This. Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. The altar in his possession was used to nab souls, whereas the altar right before him seemed to have a slaughter formation inscribed into it. Even if it was him, he had no doubt that he would be reduced into minced meat if he was caught amid the sword chi. In other words, anyone who tried to approach the black box would be instantaneously killed by the endless sword chi. You are here, aren't you? Unable to see through the box nor the altar through his eye of insight, Zhongxian began scanning the surroundings as he called out. Humph. Even if you manage to find your way here, it makes no difference at all. As long as you are unable to open the box, your mission is doomed to end in a failure. Vicious eerie voice echoed within the chamber. You are in the box. Zhongxian narrowed his eyes. Indeed. Even if you know it now, what can you do about it? Vicious mocked. Hearing those words, Zhongxian fell into deep contemplation. Back at Chen Zhe's residence, when the other Vicious had nabbed his soul, he had muttered to himself, saying that as long as he devoured Zhongxian, a celestial master teacher, he would be able to escape from his restraints. From the looks of it now, he had been referring to this box back then. If he opened it and the other Vicious escaped. Considering how even the Vicious in the Book of Heaven's path would not be able to make a move, Zhongxian was not too confident. But, if he did not let Vicious out, there would be no way he would be able to kill the latter through the black box. Let me see what it is. Perplexed, Zhongxian slowly walked toward the black box. The closer he came to the black box, the more powerful the killing intent became. If it had been Wu Shu and the others, or perhaps even an 8-star master teacher, their minds could have very well succumbed by now. However, Zhongxian was different. Driving his Heaven's Path Shenqi, he was able to easily dispel the pressure arising from the killing intent. Before long, he was already standing at the perimeter just outside of the altar's area of attack. He did not dare proceed any further, but from this distance, he was already able to get a good look at the black box through his eye of insight. The black box was roughly 50 centimeters in length, and there was not the slightest opening in the box, as if it was just a lump of metal. What is it? Zhongxian's clone also walked over. Zhongxian pondered for a moment before saying, if I'm not mistaken, it seems to be the Celestial Designer Lock. Celestial Designer Lock? Zhongxian's clone asked in confusion. He had been in the storage ring over the past few days, and Zhongxian had not had any time to share his newly learned knowledge with him yet. As such, his current knowledge was far beneath Zhongxian's. The Celestial Designer Lock is a unique artifact known to be the most unyielding lock that a celestial designer can create. It's often used to seal away highly dangerous objects, and once the lock is in place, not even the creator of the Celestial Designer Lock will be able to open it. If one forces it open, the content of the box will be utterly destroyed, Zhongxian said. It's different from Celestial Designer Mechanical Container in the sense that the Celestial Designer Mechanical Container can be opened, whereas the Celestial Designer Lock is intended for permanent sealing. Zhongxian had once encountered a Celestial Designer Mechanical Container, and while it had been difficult to open, those who managed to find the key would still be able to open it. On the other hand, the Celestial Designer Lock was like a dead knot. What was sealed within was doomed to never see the light of the day again. If one forcefully pried it open, what was sealed within the box would be destroyed as well. Since that's the case, isn't it obvious what we should do? As long as we attempt to pry open the black box forcefully and trigger the self-destruction of the Celestial Designer Lock, we will be able to kill Vicious, right? Zhongxian's clone said. It was not as if they were here to save Vicious. If they could kill him, that would be for the best. This. Zhongxian shook his head. I fear that things might not be as simple as that. Stroking his lower jaw, he began circling around the altar, deep in thought. If it was as easy as his clone made it out to be, there was no way Vicious would have allowed them to come this far so easily. While they might have been unable to get close to the Celestial Designer Lock, if they were to knock the box with their zhengqi, they should be able to trigger its self-destruction without coming under the attack of the altar. But it was precisely how easy and convenient everything was that left Zhongxian deeply apprehensive inside. Could an expert of Vicious caliber really be done in that easily? Clone, Let's take a look around the area and see if we can find anything, Zhongxian said as he swiftly imparted what he had learned recently to his clone. After which, he began walking around the perimeter of the altar's area of attack to check for any anomalies. The underground chamber was massive, and its walls were reinforced with the same unique material as the one used to construct the rooms in the labyrinth above. Frowning, Zhongxian placed his finger lightly on the wall. Who? A book materialized in the Library of Heaven's Path. Upon taking a look, Zhongxian frowned. This. Chapter 1224 Releasing Vicious. After reading through the content of the book, Zhongxian exhaled deeply. He pondered for a moment before heading to a corner of the room to sit down cross-legged. Some time later, his clone came over and asked in bewilderment, "What are you doing?" Zhongxian turned around and replied with a pale face, "Whenever I have a question that I can't find an answer to, I like to sit in a corner of the room to mull over the secrets of the universe and the meaning of life." Mull over the secrets of the universe? Meaning of life? Zhongxian's clone was bewildered. When did the main body gain such an ability? Why was he unaware of it? Even though he had no idea what the main body was up to, he felt that the main body had a reason for doing what he was doing. Thus, he decided not to interfere in the latter's business. "I'll just take a look around. Feel free to continue what you are doing." Leaving those words behind, he turned around and left. Around 2 hours later, Zhongxian exhaled deeply before getting to his feet once more. At this moment, his eyes were reddened, and he seemed to be drained of energy. His feet wobbled unstably on the ground, and he nearly fell over. Upon seeing this sight, his clone quickly rushed forward to support him. "I'm fine." Zhongxian waved his hand as he quickly drove his Heaven's Path Zhenqi 3 circulations around his body. The weakness and exhaustion he felt were finally alleviated. Noting that Zhongxian had recovered from his weakened state, his clone quickly sent him a telepathic message. "I have just checked the entire area, and other than the black box and the altar, there are not any mechanisms in the area at all. If my deduction is correct, I think we are already at the bottommost layer of the island." In the 2 hours that Zhongxian had spent contemplating the meaning of life, he had already gone over every nook and cranny of the underground chamber. With the impartation from the main body, his comprehension of formations and mechanisms had already reached the level of 7-star pinnacle. Given that, if he still could not find anything amiss after a thorough check, the chances were that there were no mechanisms in the room. "I see." Zhongxian nodded. "What do we do now?" Zhongxian's clone frowned. "Should we just destroy the Celestial Designer lock and hope that it will kill Vicious?" Zhongxian's clone had a feeling that his main body knew something, just that the latter was unwilling to speak of it. Zhongxian shook his head. "That won't do. There might be other conditions to activating the attack of the altar other than distance. If we make a rash move, we will risk triggering the altar. If so, we might very well end up as nourishment for Vicious. Then, it'll be safer for us to destroy the altar first. Once we destroy the altar, we will be able to do whatever we want with the box," Zhongxian replied. "Sounds reasonable." Zhongxian's clone nodded. Thus, the both of them walked closer to the altar to take a closer look at it. The inscriptions on the altar were even more intricate than those on the altar in his storage ring. There was no way for Zhongxian to accurately discern the effects of the formation inscribed onto it. Flicking his wrist, Zhongxian took out a spiritless Saint Lotier sword he had obtained from the Qiuwu Palace and tossed it over. Su 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 su. In the blink of an eye, the Saint Lotier sword was torn into pieces by the onslaught of sword qi from the altar. Seeing the sight, the mouth of Zhongxian's clone twitched. His physical body was capable of regenerating back to its original form even when it was being sliced into pieces, but his soul still was not strong enough yet. Judging by the might of the sword qi, his soul could very well dissipate if it was subjected to such an assault. On the other hand, Zhongxian closed his eyes shortly after the altar came into action. A moment later, he opened his eyes once more and retrieved a bunch of formation flags from his storage ring. "What are you planning to do with these formation flags?" Zhongxian's clone asked in bewilderment. Shouldn't they have been thinking of a way to break the altar? Why would he suddenly whip out a couple of formation flags? The formation inscribed onto the altar is extremely profound, at least reaching the level of grade 8. A forceful attempt to break the formation could cause it to blow up instead, which would be extremely dangerous. Thus, I intend to deal with the formation by setting another one up myself, Zhongxian explained. Deal with the formation by setting another one up yourself? Zhongxian's clone pondered for a moment before nodding in realization. In essence, what Zhongxian intended to do was to use a new formation to interfere with the functions of the altar's formation and destroy its internal structure. As simple as it sounded theoretically, it was no easy feat to pull off. In the first place, it was already difficult to construct a formation on top of another one, and a mistake in doing so could potentially result in severe backlash from the existing formation. On top of that, in order to successfully neutralize the altar's formation, Zhongxian had to construct a formation that possessed might on par with it. The difficulty in doing so was truly unimaginable. However, Zhongxian's clone knew that his main body would only make a move when the latter was confident of success, so he decided not to say too much about the matter. Instead, he took a few steps back and returned back into the passageway, ready to flee if a mishap occurred. On the other hand, Zhongxian took a deep breath before leaping into the air. Then, he suddenly flicked his wrist. Woo woo oo woo. More than 100 formation flags shot out from his palm, falling accurately into their respective positions. Boom. The next moment, the massive formation began whirring into action. It's a starlight convergence formation. Zhongxian's clone recognized the activated formation in an instant. It was neither a slaughter formation nor an illusory formation but a spirit-gathering formation, a half-grade 8 formation. It tapped into the lingering power of stars in the world in order to gather spiritual energy. To use such a formation to break the altar. It's indeed a good idea. While Zhongxian's clone snubbed the main body for being so much weaker than him, he had to admit that he was really impressed by the latter at this moment. The formation inscribed on the altar was extremely powerful, possibly even a grade 8 formation, and given the current strength of the main body, it would be difficult for him to set up a formation sufficiently powerful to interfere with and destroy it. However, a spirit-gathering formation would be a different story. On the surface, overlapping a spirit-gathering formation on top of the already powerful grade 8 formation may seem like a foolish act, but everything in the world had a tolerance limit. Even grade 8 formations were no exception to the rule. It was unknown where the altar received the required spiritual energy to drive the formation from, but the energy that it received was already plenty, and there was no need to supplement it anymore. Thus, if a spirit-gathering formation was set up on top of it, it would not be long before the spiritual energy gathered in the altar's formation exceeded its limit. While Zhongxian's clone was still analyzing the situation, Zhongxian whipped out 10,000 high-tier spirit stones and placed them into the formation in order to speed up the rate at which the starlight convergence formation was gathering spiritual energy. Hong long long. The massive influx of energy swiftly formed a gigantic energy whirlpool, causing the underground chamber to shake intensely. Under the control of the starlight convergence formation, the massive whirlpool of spiritual energy swiftly dived into the altar. The altar emanated a brilliant glow, and a moment later, it began to inflate swiftly like a balloon. Boom! The altar had finally reached its limit, and a deafening explosion resounded in the underground chamber. We have succeeded. The eyes of Zhongxian's clone lit up. He had thought that even with the prowess of the starlight convergence formation, it would still have taken at least a month in order to destroy the formation. However, the main body's act of tossing 10,000 spirit stones into the formation had hastened the process by innumerable times. In less than an incense's time, the altar had already exploded. Upon the altar's destruction, Zhongxian swiftly packed all of his formation flags back into the storage ring. Barely after he did so, the killing intent in the underground chamber suddenly intensified, and a frenzied laughter sounded. Ha ha ha. Zhongxian, it seems like I really made the right choice in luring you here. I really have to thank you for freeing me from my restraints. I, Vicious, have finally returned to the world. As those words were spoken, Zhongxian and his clone suddenly realized that their bodies had been frozen by some kind of power, and an incomparably powerful might weighed down on them, threatening to crush their bodies. Coming to realize what had just happened, the face of Zhongxian's clone turned ghastly pale. T, He wasn't trapped in the celestial designer lock but the altar? As they had sensed that the killing intent originated from the celestial designer lock, they had instinctively assumed that Vicious was inside there. They had thought that the destruction of the altar would allow them to deal with Vicious, but it turned out that they were sorely mistaken. The true seal that was restraining Vicious was actually the altar itself. Quick, escape. Seemingly having just realized what had just happened as well, Zhongxian's eyes narrowed in astonishment. With an anxious bellow, he swiftly executed a powerful palm strike. Sila. The powerful might of the heavenly demon Great Sorrow Palm swiftly tore apart the frozen space trapping him. Zhongxian stretched his hand forward to return his clone into his storage ring before executing the unbounded Voyager. His silhouette blurred, and in the blink of an eye, he was already at the other end of the passageway. Rushing all the way up, it took only 10 breaths for him to return to where Hall Master Xing and the others were. They had been attempting to find another exit to the ghost cavern so as to secure an escape route, but their efforts had been futile. Principal Zhong. Upon seeing Zhongxian, the group heaved a sigh of relief. Follow me. We need to escape from here as fast as possible, Zhongxian urged. Vicious had been freed from his restraints, and he was not someone whom they could deal with at the moment. The only thing they could do right now was to get away as fast as they could. But the dragon severing lock is still blocking the entrance. How are we to leave the ghost cavern? Wuxia asked. With the entrance sealed and no alternative exits in sight, they had nowhere to escape to. Don't worry about that and follow me. Paying no heed to the doubts that the others harbored, Zhongxian continued charging forward. The remaining members of the group were perplexed, but they chose to follow him. Passing through a long passageway, they finally arrived before the dragon severing lock once more. It was still firmly blocking the entrance, sealing their escape route. What should we do? Wuxia asked anxiously. Hall Master Xing gritted his teeth and said, since it has already come down to this, why don't we combine the strength of all 9 of us together through a collaborative formation to attack the dragon severing lock? We might just be able to force our way out. It seems like there's no other choice. Wuxia nodded. However, halfway through his words, he realized that Zhongxian had already walked up to the dragon severing lock, and stroking the massive rock gently, the latter said, "Open up. We need to leave." Jia. Before everyone's shocked gaze, the dragon severing lock, which even a leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle expert might not have been able to destroy, suddenly began nudging aside. This. Everyone widened their eyes in shock at the unbelievable sight before them. It was an established fact that unless one possessed strength greater than the forged dragon severing lock, there would be no way to pass through a path that it sealed. Yet, the young man before him had actually managed to get the dragon severing lock to nudge aside just by touching it gently and saying a few words to it. This was too exaggerated. Let's hurry up and leave, Zhongxian urged as he took the lead forward. On the other hand, the others also know that this was not the time to be dozing off, so they quickly caught up to Zhongxian and escaped from the little island. Hong long long. The shaking of the little island swiftly intensified, and by the time the group finally leaped back to where they had been prior to entering the ghost cavern, amid a furious flinging of mud, the little island actually began rising into the air. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Jeji. Jeji. The little island rose higher and higher, and it did not take long before it was fully freed from the marsh. Following which, the little island did a 180 degrees turn, and as the mud shrouding it swiftly fell back into the marsh, its true face finally unfolded. Amidst the crowd, Division Head Liao's body trembled as he spoke the words that were in everyone's mind. Is that a head? Shockingly, the little island was shaped similar to a head. The lake that they had encountered prior to entering the ghost cavern was actually one of the 2 eyes of the head. A glint flashed across the massive eyes as a powerful voice boomed. Ha ha ha. I, Vicious, have finally returned. Tell me, how do you want to die? Vicious of the marshlands of the Northern Meadows was finally back. Roughly 15 minutes. Chapter 1225 The Eccentric Teacher and Student. How can this be? Feeling the immense pressure emanated by the massive head, the group froze in place. They could feel that the massive head was not just for show. The strength that it wielded was boundless as well, and even though it had not made a move yet, The indomitable aura that it emanated had already sealed the surrounding space, making escape nigh impossible. This. Leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle? Wu Shi gulped down a mouthful of saliva. He could vividly sense the other party's strength, leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle. There was no way they could stand against an expert of this caliber. Zhongxian nodded grimly in response. At leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle, Vicious was far stronger than the Qingtian Emperor, and this was without taking into account the powerful means that he possessed. What do we do? The group swiftly fell into a state of panic. If the enemy was only at leaving Aperture Realm Advanced stage, they could still have given it a try, but leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle, there was no way to win no matter how hard they struggle. To be able to think of using another formation to break the altar, Zhongxian, I have to admit that you are indeed a clever person. But it seems like clever people like you have a tendency to fall prey to their own wits. It's thanks to your help that I managed to escape from my restraint. Won't you tell me how you are feeling at the moment? You have been desperately trying to kill me all along, only to end up freeing me with your own hands. Regretful? Guilt-ridden? The floating face in the sky eyed Zhongxian with a playful look in his eyes. He had sealed the surrounding space, so there was no way that the group of humans before him would be able to escape. At this point, victory was already his. I do feel quite regretful, but since the situation has already played out this way, there's no point crying over spilt milk. However, I'm just curious to know the origin of the altar. How did you manage to get trapped in it? Zhongxian replied calmly. This was the only thing that he just could not comprehend at this point. It was obvious that the altar was an artifact of the otherworldly demonic tribe, so how did Vicious end up being trapped in it? Since you are about to be devoured by me, I'll accede to your request, since it's the last one you are going to be making anyway, the face in the sky sneered coldly. That altar was the doing of that Qingtian bastard. The Qingtian Emperor? Zhongxian frowned in astonishment. But, isn't he your student? Didn't you impart the heritage of the soul oracles to him? Why would the Qingtian Emperor seal his own teacher into an altar? Humph. 2,000 years ago, when I summoned that Qingtian bastard over, I was only a pair of tattered eyes and a sliver of will. Vicious harumphed coldly. I taught him the heritage of the soul oracles for one simple reason: I wanted to make use of his strength to find my other body parts so as to return to my peak. Yuan Zhongxian nodded. He had also deduced this much. How could a person who was given the nickname Vicious possibly be so kind as to accept a student and pass on the lost heritage of the soul oracles for free? It went without saying that he had his own motives. That fellow wasn't too bad too. He regarded me as his teacher, and he even captured many celestial designers and blacksmiths and gathered countless precious ores to forge this head for me, Vicious said. Forge? Zhongxian suddenly remembered the countless rooms he had seen earlier. If the entire little island was Vicious' head, those rooms should have been the internal structure of his brain. To forge such a massive head, not only would an immense amount of materials be required, more importantly, the manpower needed would truly be massive as well. It seemed like in the past 2,000 years, on top of master teachers, many celestial designers and blacksmiths had lost their lives, too. Just that, due to Vicious means in concealing the little island and the innate treacherous nature of the marshland, no one had suspected that those deaths were part of someone's scheme. From the very start, that Qingtian bastard was extremely respectful toward me, carrying out whatever orders I had for him without any hesitation. As such, I never doubted his loyalty, but he actually dared scheme against me. Overflowing rage could be heard within Vicious' voice. At some point in time, he brought the altar over under the pretext of helping me regain my strength, but in truth, he was using it with the head he had the celestial designers forge to have me seal. By the time I realized it, I was already imprisoned here. Imprisoned? That's right. However, that Qingtian bastard's intention was not just to imprison me. From the very start, he had intended to use the soul arts he had learned from me to steal my memories and replace me. At this point, Vicious sneered in disdain, as if mocking a mere ant for having such ridiculous thoughts. Even though the Qingtian Emperor had been Vicious' subordinate, he had still been a proud and lofty emperor of the otherworldly demonic tribe, an existence that was born superior to other. Even if the other party was the powerful Vicious, There was no way he would willingly submit to him. Not to mention, the current Vicious was nothing but a mere shell of his former self. Steal your memories and replace you. Zhongxian shook his head and sighed in pity. As a legendary expert who rivaled Kong Shi back in your prime, you actually fell for the ploy of a mere Qingtian emperor? Even if Vicious had fallen from grace, he should still have retained countless protective measures and trump cards. Yet, to still be outplayed by the Qingtian emperor despite that, this was truly inconceivable. Humph. Even though I did not doubt his loyalty, I did guard against him from the start to the end. But 2,000 years ago, I had only just awoken from my slumber, and my cultivation was not even at Saint Realm then. I needed his strength and the resources he provided, so I had no choice but to go along with him. At this point, a cruel glint flashed across Vicious' eyes as he said, "But as you have said, how could I possibly be outdone by that Qingtian bastard so easily? I secretly left a sliver of my will in his mind so that if he attempted to act against me, I would be able to crush his soul instantly." Hearing those words, Zhongxian's lips twitched. They sure were a good pair of teacher and student. Beneath the seemingly calm waters, they were actually stabbing daggers into the backs of one another. Both adept at playing the game of treachery. After the forging of the head, in order to revive myself and gain some fighting prowess, I would have to extend my consciousness to cover the entire little island. However, if I were to do so, I would temporarily lose my consciousness, and he made use of this opening to use the altar to seal me. Recalling the matter, Vicious rage flared. Just as he was about to kill me, the will I had left inside his head triggered. He did not want to die, so naturally, he had no choice but to heed my orders. However, it seemed like he had prepared a hand to ensure that I would not be able to kill him, so I did not dare make a move either. As such, we could only maintain the stalemate between us. This. Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing glanced at one another. The word teacher had a very deep significance to those in the master-teacher continent, including ordinary cultivators. If a student was found to have betrayed their own teacher, they would be killed without any hesitation. Heaven, earth, kin, teacher, sovereign. The position of a teacher was even above that of one's country, just beneath that of one's parent. Given the culture of the master-teacher continent, it was very rare to see a student scheming against their own teacher. However, with this pair of otherworldly demons, the teacher was thinking about how he could make use of his own student every day, whereas the student was thinking about how he could replace his teacher every day. How eccentric. Noting the incomprehension among the others, Zhongxian explained, "The otherworldly demonic tribe pledges their loyalty to the spirit god. The word teacher has no significance to them at all." He had encountered quite a few otherworldly demons on his journey and even eliminated the Qingtian lineage from its kings up to its emperor. Due to his frequent encounters with them, he had come to learn a bit about their culture and beliefs. There was only a single existence they were truly loyal to, and that was the spirit god. Only the words from the spirit god would they unconditionally obey. On the other hand, the term teacher really meant nothing to them at all. Putting aside scheming against their own teacher, there was not any social stigma even toward the killing of one's teacher among them. They did not consider it a reprehensible act. It was for this reason that the Qingtian Emperor and Vicious had no qualms about clashing with one another in the shadows over the past 2,000 years. In fact, Zhongxian suspected that the reason the Vicious in Wu Yang's underground chamber had been able to regain consciousness could very well have been the doing of the Qingtian Emperor in order to keep his teacher in check. Zhongxian raised his head and asked, "To make someone like you hesitate to make a move, what is the Qingtian Emperor's hand?" One must know that the Qingtian Emperor intended Vicious harm, and considering that Vicious was in a good position to exact vengeance, there was no need for him to hesitate. "It's regarding the news concerning a celestial amulet of legacy," Vicious said. Perhaps the years of isolation and solitude had really left him deeply stifled. Facing the group of master teachers who would very soon become his prey, he revealed everything without any worry. Celestial amulet of legacy? Zhongxian had searched the Qingtian Emperor's memory, and he had learned of this matter as well. As such, he was not too surprised by the revelation. On the other hand, however, the eyes of Wu Shi and the others narrowed in astonishment. Ignoring the shock of the others, Vicious harumphed before continuing. It was a puppet loyal to that Qingtian bastard who uncovered this piece of intelligence. As a master teacher, you should also know how valuable a celestial amulet of legacy is. The crowd nodded in agreement. The celestial amulets of legacy were artifacts that Kongsha had personally left behind, and they concerned the supreme artifact that Kongsha had forged himself, the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn. As such, the value of a celestial amulet of legacy was so great that it would leave even the 9-star master teachers of the Master Teacher Pavilion going into a frenzy over it. An excited gleam surfaced in Vicious' eyes. If I could obtain a celestial amulet of legacy, I would be able to free myself from this hellish state I am in, quickly find my remaining body parts, and return to my peak. Perhaps, I might even be able to steal the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn and surpass Kongsha. Ordinary otherworldly demons might not have known what they should do with a celestial amulet of legacy even if they did obtain one, but as one who had fought with Kongsha for many times, Vicious knew very where to use one and how to best use one. Due to my current condition, I am unable to leave the marshlands. Thus, I could only rely on him to obtain a celestial amulet of legacy. As such, I had no choice but to spare his wretched life. Furthermore, he also knew where a few of my body parts are, and if he had destroyed them before I got to them, my recovery would have been severely impeded. Vicious continued. No wonder. Zhongxian nodded in realization. The allure of a celestial amulet of legacy was simply too great, and after a long period of hibernation, Vicious would surely want to regain his strength as soon as possible. As such, it was understandable why he would choose to spare the Qingtian Emperor despite the latter's betrayal. Noticing a peculiar aspect in Vicious' story, Zhongxian tried to sound him out. You said that the intelligence was procured by a puppet loyal to the Qingtian Emperor? Considering that this is a piece of news that even Tian Qing is unaware of, it seems like the Qingtian Emperor trusts that puppet quite a bit. Tian Qing was a sliver of the Qingtian Emperor's will, so he could not be considered a puppet. As for King Zhongqing, he could only be considered a lackey at most, so the puppet that Vicious spoke about probably did not refer to him either. If that was the case, could it be that there was another close aide of the Qingtian Emperor hiding within the Qingyuan Empire? But again, assuming that that was true, why didn't he discover anything about that in the Qingtian Emperor's memories? There's no need to try sound me out. That fellow has already pledged his loyalty to me, Vicious sneered coldly. Then, seemingly losing interest in speaking any further, a cold glint flashed across Vicious' eyes as a surge of killing intent burst from him. All right, story time is over. You should be happy that you have managed to learn so many confidential secrets. Now, it's about time for me to send you on your way. Boom. A compelling pressure suddenly descended from the heavens, causing a suffocating sensation to crush their chests. Everyone's breathing hastened. Chapter 1226 Liu Yang's Crisis 1 Principal Zhong will help you stall him. Meanwhile, you try to get away. Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing stepped forward as they frenziedly drove their zhenqi to ward off the pressure on them, protecting the other members of the group. Whatever the existence before them was, he was simply too powerful. There was no way they would be able to escape unscathed from his clutches. However, if they went all out, perhaps, they just might be able to buy sufficient time for Zhongxian to escape. Zhongxian's incredible talents would surely play a critical role in furthering the strength of mankind in the future, and a person like him could not be allowed to die just like that. Thus, saving him would be their final contribution to mankind. Get away. If we had tried before that little island floated all the way up, we might still have been to get away, but now. Zhongxian shook his head and sighed. Did you really think that his explaining everything to us just to vent his emotions? This. Not understanding what Zhongxian was getting at, the crowd fell silent. Indeed. It was perplexing why Vicious would actually reveal all of these valuable secrets to them, such that they even forgot about the predicament they were in for a moment. Thinking about it once more, his actions felt more like buying time. Given that his will has only just escaped from its restraints, it required some time in order to gain absolute control over such a massive island. Thus, he decided to use these information to divert our attention. If I'm not mistaken, he should have already gained full control over the head by now. Even if we start running now, Considering how big the marshlands are, there's no way we will get away in time. Furthermore, given the treacherous terrain we are in, our haste might just land us in deeper danger, Zhongxian replied. Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing had only just advanced their cultivation to leaving Aperture Realm primary stage, whereas Vicious was at leaving Aperture Realm pinnacle. Even if put their lives on the line to stall Vicious, how long could they possibly stall him for? Not to mention, given Vicious' superior cultivation realm, he would surely catch up soon after. Most likely, he would be caught before he could even escape 10 li away. But Zhongshe, if you knew what the other party was up to beforehand, why didn't you flee earlier? Jisha couldn't help but ask. Since you saw through the other party's motive, you should have escaped when you had the time to do so. Why did you still remain here to play along with his games and ask him questions? Now that the other party has gained full control over the little island and returned to his peak state, we are all doomed. Instead of responding to Jisha's question, Zhongxian walked forward and gazed at the massive face before him. There's no way we can escape at this point, and we don't have the strength to rival you either. I hope that you can just answer this final question of mine. Who is the puppet that you were referring to? Ha ha ha. To still be concerned about this matter despite the situation you are in, your mental resilience sure is incredible, perhaps even on par with Kongsha back then. I'm starting to think that it would be a pity to kill a genius like you just like that. Vicious shook his head as he gazed down at Zhongxian with a look of pity. I'll offer you one last chance then. As long as you pledge your loyalty and offer your soul up to me, not only will I tell you who the puppet is, I'll even spare your life. When I finally obtain a celestial amulet of legacy, I'll take you along with me to find the great codex of spring and autumn and even aid you in becoming the next world's teacher. You want me to pledge loyalty to you? Zhongxian's lips curled up in disdain. I have lived as a master teacher, and I'll die as one too. There's no way I'll side with an otherworldly demon like you. However, even if you don't tell me who that puppet is, I already have a good idea who he is. Oh! Vicious looked down at Zhongxian with a playful look in his eyes, as if daring the latter to give him a guess. It's the emperor of the Qingyuan Empire, Chu Tianxing, right? Zhongxian replied calmly. Oh! Vicious' eyes narrowed. Tianqing was the vice head of the Master Teacher Pavilion, and yet, while he hasn't uncovered any information about the Celestial Amulet of Legacy yet, the puppet you spoke of did. From that, it can be seen that the puppet possesses an exceptionally high standing in the Qingyuan Empire. There's no way Wu Shi or Hall Master Xing could be your ally, and Pavilion Master Go has been killed as well. Thus, that only leaves us with Chu Tianxing. Zhongxian revealed his deduction. It was not too difficult to guess this. A person who could uncover news about an elusive celestial amulet of legacy had to have a powerful intelligence network in the Qingyuan Empire, one that was even wider than the one Tianqing controlled. As powerful as the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion's intelligence network was, there was still a single power in the Qingyuan Empire whose intelligence network surpassed it, the Qingyuan royal family. And the one who could tap into the intelligence network of the royal family was naturally the emperor of the Qingyuan Empire, Chu Tianxing. Furthermore, Chu Tianxing's actions had truly been very suspicious. King Zhongqing had been captured time and time again, and yet, Chu Tianxing was willing to pay a heavy price each time to bail him out. Furthermore, now that he thought about it, on the night that the souls of 8 master teachers of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion were nabbed, Chu Tianxing had visited the Master Teacher Pavilion under the pretext of paying a visit to King Zhongqing. He had not been able to connect the dots earlier, but upon hearing Vicious mention a puppet, everything swiftly came together to form a clear picture. To be able to see through everything with just a few clues, as expected of a celestial master teacher. You are keener than I expected, Vicious sneered coldly, not intending to deny the matter. There was no reason for him to deny it at this point. In any case, the people before them were pretty much dead men anyway. Celestial Master Teacher? Zhongshe is a Celestial Master Teacher? Hall Master Xing, Ji Shu, and the others were astonished. Of the crowd, the only one who was aware of Zhongxian's true identity was Wu Shi. Due to safety concerns, Wu Shi had not even revealed the matter to Hall Master Xing. Thus, upon hearing the words of the otherworldly demon before them, all of them widened their eyes in shock, unable to believe their ears. In the long history of the master-teacher continent, there had only been a single celestial master-teacher, and that was Kong Shi. And yet, the young man before them was actually a celestial master-teacher as well. You didn't even tell your comrades about the matter. Ha ha ha, you sure are a wary individual. That's right. He's a celestial master-teacher, a person whose existence is acknowledged by the heavens themselves. As long as premature death doesn't come to him, it's only a matter of time before he becomes the next world's teacher. Vicious burst into a hearty laughter before abruptly coming to a halt. A cold glint surfaced in his eyes as he continued. However, it seems like that will never come to be. I have fought with Kong Shi on many occasions, and I am very familiar with all his means. You may have 1,000 ideas in your mind, but let me tell you that you are just wasting your effort. How about it? Submit to me, and you can continue living in this world. Otherwise, not only will you die, even your kin and friends will have to suffer due to your obstinacy. I'll be honest with you here. The very moment you arrived in these marshlands, I instructed Chu Tianxing to capture your student. Chances are that your student is already being held captive at this moment, Vicious sneered. You had Chu Tianxing capture my student? Zhong Xian's gaze turned incredibly cold. He could not have imagined that Vicious would actually stoop down to such lowly and underhanded means against him. Indeed. Do you honestly expect me to believe your words? My student is currently cultivating in the Combat Master Hall, where he is protected by countless combat masters. Even if Chu Tianxing attempts to make a move against him, can he possibly breach the defenses of the Combat Master Hall? Zhong Xian harumphed coldly. Currently, he only had a single direct disciple in the Qingyuan Empire, Liu Yang. Before he left, he instructed Liu Yang to focus his effort on cultivating in the Combat Master Hall. Even though Chu Tianxing wielded great power and influence in the Qingyuan Empire, surely he would not dare barge into the Combat Master Hall and cause a ruckus. Of course, I concede that there's no way Chu Tianxing will be able to breach the defenses of the Combat Master Hall, but what if he invites your student out? Vicious said with twisted smile. Invites? An ominous feeling surfaced in the back of Zhong Xian's mind as he clenched his fists tightly. Zhong Xian had suspected Chu Tianxing of betraying mankind prior to leaving Qingyuan City, but due to the lack of evidence, he had decided against publicizing the matter for the time being. Instead, he had Wu Shi dispatch a few master teachers to keep a tight watch over the latter. If Chu Tianxing invited his student to the royal palace as a guest in his capacity as the emperor of the Qingyuan Empire, there would really be no reason for Liu Yang to turn down the invitation. And once Liu Yang left the secure Combat Master Hall to enter the royal palace. To make matters worse, Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing were currently by his side, so there was no one left in Qingyuan City who wielded sufficient authority and strength to oppose Chu Tianxing head-on. Seeing that he had finally broken Zhong Xian's calm demeanor, Vicious sneered coldly, "Since you were coming over, wouldn't it have been disrespectful of me if I did not give you my warmest welcome? Humph, if I did not have at least this much in me, how could I have possibly fought on equal grounds against Kong Shi back then? I'll give you some time to think it over, but know that there is a limit to my patience. Submit to me, and I'll spare you and your student. I will even impart the complete heritage of the Soul Oracles to you on top of that and support you in becoming the next world's teacher. Otherwise, I'm afraid that you will just have to watch helplessly here as your student suffers a tragic death." You! Zhong Xian glared at Vicious in rage. This was the first time that someone dared to threaten him like that. In Qingyuan City's Combat Master Hall. On the third day after the departure of the group to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows, the Combat Master Hall ushered in an esteemed guest, the Emperor of the Qingyuan Empire, Chu Tianxing. Division Head Ju, I'll really have to trouble you for this matter. King Zhongqing is still being locked in the Master Teacher Pavilion, and honestly speaking, he really didn't commit any heinous crimes that warrant such extreme treatment. The biggest mistake he really made was provoking Zhong Shi. I don't want to put you on the spot either, so I just hope that you can bring me to him so that we can attempt to reconcile. Chu Tianxing said with a vexed look on his face. He had come to the Combat Master Hall with several guards, who were currently standing behind him, in order to meet with the head of the Weapon Division, Division Head Ju. In Hall Master Xing, Division Head Liao, and Division Head Wei's absence, the responsibility of managing the affairs of the Combat Master Hall ended up falling on his shoulders. "Pardon me, Your Majesty, but your arrival is truly untimely. Zhongshe has recently gone into seclusion, so I'm afraid that you will have to return another day." Division Head Ju shook his head as he turned down Chu Tianxing's request with an apologetic look. Hall Master Xing had instructed that this expedition was a confidential operation, so if anyone sought them in this period of time, he had to turn them down with an appropriate excuse. As powerful as the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall was, it would still be beneficial for it to maintain amiable relations with the regional royal family. As such, it would not be good for it to turn away Chu Tianxing curtly. "Zhongshe is in the midst of a seclusion? I see." A look of disappointment surfaced on Chu Tianxing's face. "If I recall correctly, Zhongshe has a direct disciple named Liu Yang, right? If it isn't too much trouble, may I meet him instead? I heard that he's 17 this year, and I happen to have a daughter who is around his age. I think that it would be good for youngsters like them to get acquainted with one another." This Division Head Ju was put on the spot. He had already turned down Chu Tianxing's request to meet Zhongxian, so if he hindered the latter from meeting Zhongxian's student as well, it would seem as if he was intentionally making things hard for Chu Tianxing. Division Head Ju pondered for a moment before replying. "Pardon me, but I'm afraid that I can't make a decision on Liu Yang's behalf. Allow me to send my man over to ask him first. If he's preoccupied at the moment, I fear that there's nothing I can do." "I'll be troubling you then, Division Head Ju," Chu Tianxing replied with a smile. "As you know, I came here with the intention of mending relations with Zhongshe. If you could have your men put in a few good words for me, I'll extend my deepest gratitude to you once the matter is done." Division Head Ju nodded before beckoning a combat master over to issue a few instructions. The combat master hurriedly rushed over to Liu Yang's residence, but before he could even get close, he could already hear loud peng, 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 peng sounds echoing from within. Knocking on the door and entering, he soon saw a 17-year-old young man brandishing his spear powerfully. Perhaps due to his long hours of training, his entire body was drenched with sweat, and his face had turned a little pale even. "Young Master Liu, you." The combat master couldn't help but kindly advise, "I think you should take a rest first. It won't do to push yourself too far, or else you might injure yourself. It'll be disastrous if you damage your foundation in the midst of your training." Their progeny of combat had decreed that all combat masters must respect Zhongxian as their own teacher, and Liu Yang was Zhongxian's direct disciple. However, Liu Yang was neither a master teacher nor a combat master, so eventually, they chose to simply respectfully address him as Young Master Liu or Liu Gongzi. Every single combat master was carefully sieved from countless master teachers, so there was no such thing as a subpar cultivator within the Combat Master Hall. While the combat master who had just entered Liu Yang's residence was just an ordinary member of the Combat Master Hall, he could still easily discern that Liu Yang had overexerted himself in the midst of his training. It was good for a cultivator to be diligent in their training, but if they were to go overboard and exceed the tolerance limit of their body, they could very well damage the foundation of their cultivation, and such damage was incredibly difficult to repair. More importantly, excessive desire for swift success could easily result in a disturbance in one's state of mind, especially when the results did not meet up to one's expectations. An impaired state of mind could easily breed inner demons, and it could potentially cause one's cultivation to go berserk as well. "I know that, too, but time waits for no one." Liu Yang stopped his training and wiped away his sweat. His teacher had a total of 7 direct disciples. Zhao Ya, Lu Chong, Yuan Dao, Wei Ruyan, Zheng Yang, Wang Ying. The 6 of them had already managed to find their own path, and they were bound to ascend to great heights in the near future. He was the only direct disciple who remained with their teacher, and he had the responsibility to uphold his teacher's reputation. But with the current growth of his cultivation, he would soon be lagging far behind the others, and this had left him feeling greatly pressured. Watching Zheng Yang become the progeny of combat and commanding the combat masters authoritatively had only served to fuel his anxiety further, to the point that he felt as if he would collapse under it. He was desperate to grow stronger. He wanted to prove that he was not weaker than anyone else. With nowhere to vent that feeling of anxiety, the only thing he could do was cultivate desperately, gritting his teeth to persevere on even when his body was groaning in pain. Liu Yang turned to the combat master and asked, "You were looking for me? If there's nothing, I'll be continuing on with my cultivation now." For those who might have forgotten, Ji Shi is Ji Tianxiong, the head of the Northern Meadows City Master Teacher Pavilion. Chapter 1227 Liu Yang's Crisis 2. It's like this. The Emperor of the Qingyuan Empire, Chu Tianxing, wishes to reconcile with Zhongshe, so he has specially paid a visit to the Combat Master Hall in hopes of making amends. However, Zhongshe happens to be in seclusion at the moment, so it is not convenient for him to meet him. Thus, he hopes to meet you instead, the Combat Master said. He wants to meet me? Tell him that I'm not free. Liu Yang waved his hand impatiently. What he was lacking the most at the moment was time, and he did not want to waste a single second of it. Young Master Liu, you cannot simply spend every single second of your life cultivating. You need to relax and wind down from time to time. Even though His Majesty did have a disagreement with Zhongshe in the past, he seems to be earnestly seeking reconciliation this time around. Why don't you meet him and foster some goodwill with him? No matter what, he's still the Emperor of the Qingyuan Empire. If his attempts at reconciliation fall through, he could possibly resort to underhanded tricks to deal with Zhongshe, and that would only cause Zhongshe more trouble, the Combat Master advised. This. All right then. After a moment of hesitation, Liu Yang eventually nodded. While the other 6 of his peers were busy bringing glory to his teacher's name, he was the only one who was still leeching off their teacher, using his teacher's cultivation resources. If he added to his teacher's trouble on top of that, what rights would he have to continue remaining as Zhongshen's student? Thus, he quickly washed up and switched into a fresh set of clothes before following that combat master to the main hall. Upon seeing Liu Yang, Chu Tianxing quickly walked over to welcome him with a bright smile, completely devoid of the airs of an emperor. "You must be Brother Liu, I have long heard of your name. To be qualified to become Zhongshe's direct disciple, you must be a man of great talent." Slightly taken aback by Chu Tianxing's abrupt intimacy, Liu Yang awkwardly replied, "Your Majesty, you're flattering me." "Not at all, not at all. There isn't any point beating around the bush before someone as smart as you, so I'll just straight to the point. As you know, I had a conflict with Zhongshe previously over King Zhongqing, so I earnestly wish to make amends and heal the rift between us." At this point, Chu Tianxing raised his hand, and a guard standing behind him walked over and passed a jade container to him. "This is a gift that I have specially prepared for Zhongshe as a token of my sincerity. I hope that you won't turn down my goodwill." Glancing at the jade container in his hand, Liu Yang frowned. He slowly pried it open, and a gush of concentrated spiritual energy immediately burst forth from the container. Concentrated high-tier spirit stones, 5 of them. Liu Yang widened his eyes in astonishment. This. He knew that his teacher urgently required concentrated high-tier spirit stones, so if he could help his teacher secure these 5 concentrated high-tier spirit stones, he would be doing his teacher a great favor. Noticing Liu Yang's expression, Chu Tianxing's smile brightened. "Brother Liu, aside from the gift for Zhongshe, I have also prepared a present for you, too." He raised his hand once more, and another guard swiftly walked forward and grandly presented another jade container. "I know that Brother Liu possesses exceptional talent in fist arts, so I specially paid a visit to the Blacksmith Guild to have them forge a pair of knuckle dusters for you. It's a Saint low-tier weapon, and I believe it should be fitting for you." As Chu Tianxing spoke, the guard opened the jade container. Jia. A powerful aura emanated from the jade container. Lowering his gaze, Liu Yang saw a pair of beautifully crafted knuckle dusters. A brilliant gleam was reflected off them, and one could feel the powerful aura of a Saint low-tier weapon. "This." Liu Yang's voice went hoarse, and his body could not help but stiffen in astonishment. To be honest, he had wanted a pair of knuckle dusters for some time in order to augment his fist arts. However, his teacher had been too busy recently, and he could not bring himself to trouble his teacher at such a moment. As such, he could not hold back his agitation upon seeing Chu Tianxing's gift. Liu Yang hesitated for a brief moment before replying, "I appreciate your goodwill, but I can't accept these valuable gifts from you. Brother Liu, there's no need to hold yourself back. It's my fortune to be acquainted with you, and I hope that these gifts can serve as a token of our friendship for the many years to come. So, I hope that you won't turn down my goodwill, Chu Tianxing urged with an earnest smile. I see. Since that's the case, I'll humbly accept your gifts. I'll also relay your goodwill to my teacher. Liu Yang took the knuckle dusters from the jade container and put them on. They happened to fit him perfectly. The more he looked at them, the more he found himself liking them. As these knuckle dusters had just been forged, they did not have any spirit in them yet. As such, he could use them immediately without having to win the acknowledgement of a weapon spirit. There's no need to stand on ceremony, Chu Tianxing replied graciously. Right, that reminds me. There is going to be a family banquet in the royal palace tonight. My younger daughters have long heard of your name, and they have been pestering me for an opportunity to meet you. If it isn't too much trouble, I would like to invite you to join us in the banquet. A hesitant frown emerged on Liu Yang's forehead. Since it's a family banquet, it wouldn't be good for an outsider like me to join in the commotion. It's fine, it's fine. It isn't easy for two people to meet in this massive world, and I have already long considered you my brother, so there's no need to be so formal with me. Actually, I intended to invite Zhongshe over as well, but it's a pity that Zhongshe is currently in seclusion. Brother Liu, it'll truly be an honor for our Qingyuan royal family if you would join our family banquet, Chu Tianxing said. I thank you for your high opinion, but I need to cultivate, Liu Yang replied. Brother Liu, I know that you are a diligent individual, and I admire your perseverance as well. However, you need to take a rest from time to time and recharge yourself. Also, I actually do have a small request to make of Brother Liu during the banquet. My sons have been getting rather lazy recently, and that has been a huge headache for me. So, I hope that you can teach them a lesson and make them understand that there's a world far greater than the one that they see, and that they shouldn't get complacent with what they have. Liu Yang was conflicted for a moment before eventually nodding. All right then. No matter what, the other party did give him a new pair of knuckle dusters, so it was only right for him to return the favor. Furthermore, this was an opportunity for him to further his teacher's reputation. With these thoughts in mind, his hesitation in accepting Chu Tianxing's invitation was alleviated. All 6 of his departed seniors and juniors were all outstanding individuals, bound for great heights in the future. Living under their shadows, he had been under extreme pressure in recent days. He strongly craved for a chance to prove himself as well, and this family banquet was the perfect opportunity for him to do so. Seeing that Liu Yang had made up his mind, Division Head Ju decided not to say anything else. In any case, he did not think that any harm would come to Liu Yang under Chu Tianxing's care. Before long, the duo was already well on their way to the royal palace. By the time they arrived at the royal palace, the family banquet had already started. Countless princes and princesses walked in and out the area, chatting harmoniously with one another. As expected of the princesses of a conferred empire, they were all outstanding beauties. Sitting among them, Liu Yang could not help but feel his heart beating in nervousness. While their beauty was nowhere on par with Zhao Ya, Wang Ying, and the others, it was still inevitable that a 17-year-old young man like him would find it hard to keep his cool before their charming smiles and alluring gestures. At this moment, a young man walked over and greeted him. Liu Gongzi. You are. Liu Yang frowned. From the other party's dress-up, he could tell that the young man was a prince as well. However, his standing within the royal family did not seem to be particularly high, especially considering how Chu Tianxing neglected to introduce him. I am Chu Xiong, the 77th prince of the Qingyuan Empire, the young man replied with a bitter smile. I have met Zhongshe on 2 separate occasions, so we can be considered acquaintances of one another. If Zhongxian was there, he would have recognized the other party as none other than the young man he had met at the entrance of the Terpsichore Guild and Blacksmith Guild, Chu Gongzi, who knew that he was actually a prince of the Qingyuan Empire. However, this also explained how he could afford to pay a concentrated high-tier spirit stone for an exclusive dance from Fairy Zi Yang. A friend of my teacher? Pardon my rudeness. It's a pleasure to meet you. Liu Yang quickly got to his feet and clasped his fist. There's no need to be so polite, Chu Xiong replied with a smile. The duo chatted for a while. In between their conversation, a few princesses dropped by and offered him a drink. Drunk on the atmosphere, Liu Yang delightfully accepted their toast and drank a fair bit. Before long, he found his eyelids getting heavier and heavier, and with a clumsy stagger, he collapsed to the ground. Chu Xiong hurriedly rushed up to check on Liu Yang, but at this moment, Chu Tianxing suddenly appeared. With a sharp glint in his eyes, he bellowed, "Men, lock him in the underground prison and make sure to seal off all news about this matter." Yes. A couple of guards quickly stepped forward to bind the unconscious Liu Yang before dragging him away. Astonished by the sudden turn of events, Chu Xiong asked, "Father, what is going on? This is none of your business." Chu Tianxing waved his hand impatiently. "But, he's Zhongshe's student. Zhongshe is a genius who has succeeded in crashing our Qingyuan Empire master-teacher pavilion, and to apprehend his student like this." Chu Xiong exclaimed anxiously, only to be interjected halfway through his words. "Enough. Who do you think you are as to lecture me? If you dare speak another word of this matter, don't blame me for being heartless." Paying no heed to Chu Xiong's advice, Chu Tianxing walked away with a livid look on his face. As the 77th prince who had come from one of the many concubines in the royal palace, Chu Xiong's standing was not high. In order to gain his father's favor, he had worked diligently, successfully became a 7-star blacksmith, and advanced his cultivation to embryonic soul realm despite his young age. He had thought that he could win the respect of others through his hard work, but who knew that he would only end up being poisoned by others as well, resulting in the impairment of his soul? It was then that he realized that there was no such thing as kinship within the royal family. There were only relationships of convenience. Thus, he fell into degeneracy, frequenting brothels to comfort himself in the intimate embrace of women. It might have appeared as if he had given up on himself, but it was actually all a ruse. If he had not put up a useless front, the other princes who were vying for power would have viewed him as a threat and gotten rid of him. Furthermore, he had realized that his father was not oblivious to the viciousness of his fellow brothers, choosing only to turn a blind eye to them. This had caused the final shred of expectations he had from kinship to freeze over like a winter's river. He had thought that his acquaintance with Zhongshen might be able to change his father's low opinion of him, but who would have thought that his father would actually capture the latter's direct disciple? Having met Zhongshen twice, Chu Xiong knew how protective the young man was of those around him. If something really happened to Liu Yang, that young man could very well turn the entire Qingyuan city into a living hell. This won't do. I must inform Zhongshe of this matter this instant. If there is any misunderstanding between father and him, they should hash it out before things get out of control. Chu Xiong clenched his fists tightly and made up his mind. He had witnessed the incredible prowess that Zhongshen possessed with his own eyes, and he instinctively knew that the latter was the type of person that one should never make an enemy of. He had no idea why his father had chosen to capture Liu Yang, but from the looks of it, it seemed like there was nothing he could say that would change his father's mind. Since that was the case, he could only deal with this matter from Zhongshen's side, and hopefully, it still would not be too late to resolve the conflict between them peacefully. Thus, Chu Xiong discreetly took his leave from the banquet and returned to his accommodation. He swiftly changed his clothes before sneaking out of the royal palace to rush to the combat master hall. A combat master stood in Chu Xiong's way and asked, "Who are you looking for?" "I am Zhongshe's acquaintance, and I have some urgent matters for him," Chu Xiong replied anxiously as he passed a name scroll over. "You are Zhongshe's acquaintance. Give me a moment." Noting the anxious look on Chu Xiong's face and hearing that this was a matter relating to Zhongshen, the combat master did not dare to waste any time. He quickly took the name scroll and headed in. Not too long later, the combat master returned with a fatty behind him. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Chu Gongzi. I am Sun Qiong, Zhongshe's butler. May I know the reason behind your visit?" Sun Qiong greeted with a warm smile. Noting that the person who had come out was not Zhongshen, Chu Xiong panicked. "Pardon me, butler Sun, but I really do have an urgent matter that I need to report to Zhongshe about, so I must trouble you to inform him of my visit. Chu Gongzi, our young master is currently in seclusion, so I fear that it'll be inconvenient to interrupt him at this crucial juncture, Sun Qiong replied with a conflicted frown. If you really do have an urgent matter for our young master, you can feel free to inform me. I'll have it relayed to our young master as soon as he's out of his seclusion. This. Hearing Sun Qiong's words, Chu Xiong hesitated for a moment. From the looks of it, it seemed like he would not be able to meet Zhong Xian immediately, so he swiftly set up an isolation barrier and said, "To be honest with you, Zhongshi's direct disciple, Liu Yang, has been captured by my father." Young Master Liu Yang has been captured. Sun Qiong was taken aback for a moment before his eyes slowly narrowed menacingly. Chapter 1228 Castrate that Emperor 1. Others might not have been aware of the sentiments that Zhong Xian had for his students, but having followed him since Qianxian Kingdom, Sun Qiong could not have understood any clearer. For Lu Chong, he single-handedly faced an entire conferred kingdom. For Zhao Ya and Wang Ying, he was willing to threaten the powers that had taken them away. For Wei Ruyan, he was willing to put himself in danger. It could be said that for his students, there was nothing that he would not do. If something really happened to Liu Yang, he could already foresee Zhong Xian charging straight into the Qingyuan royal palace and wreaking havoc, not resting until he turned the entire place upside down. What should I do? Sun Qiong frowned in anxiety. Although it was said that Zhong Xian was in seclusion, Sun Qiong knew that he had gone somewhere very far away, and it would be difficult for him to return anytime soon. If Sun Qiong allowed anything to happen to Liu Yang during this period, there was no way Zhong Xian would ever forgive him. After asking for the details of the matter, Sun Qiong clasped his fist and bade farewell. Chu Gongzi, thank you for your notice. I am deeply grateful to you for your tip. I'll report this matter to our young master this instant. After which, he turned around and left. Not too long later, he arrived at Division Head Ju's residence. That is the entire matter. Sun Qiong swiftly filled Division Head Ju on the happenings before requesting, "Division Head Ju, I hope that you can dispatch some men to follow me to the royal palace to save young Master Liu Yang." "You want to march to the royal palace to save Liu Gongzi?" Division Head Ju frowned. "This is no light matter. This is a matter that concerns the relationship among the Combat Master Hall, Master Teacher Pavilion, and the regional monarchy. While I can dispatch some combat masters to demand for Liu Gongzi's release, such an action could easily escalate the conflict. It'll be safer if we report this matter to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters and have them mediate for us." "Report it to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters?" A deep frown emerged between Sun Qiong's brows. At this point, they did not even know what condition Liu Yang was in. A single day delayed meant an additional day of danger for the latter. If they were to settle this matter through bureaucracy, who could guarantee that Liu Yang would still be alive by the time any concrete action was taken? At this point, Sun Qiong could not help but recall the torture he had been put through by King Zhongqing, and an involuntary shudder ran through his body. Combat masters are effectively the soldiers of the Master Teacher Pavilion, so there's a strict regimentation that we have to follow. In order to mobilize our men, we will need a decree from the Hall Master himself. I apologize, but there is really nothing I can do about this matter. However, there should be no cause for worry. No matter what, Liu Gongzi is Zhongshi's student, so Chu Tianxing should not go too far, Division Head Ju consoled. It was not that he did not want to help Sun Qiong, but the potential consequences that could arise from dispatching combat masters to confront the regional monarchy were simply too great. A division head like him was not qualified to bear the responsibility of the outcome. If Hall Master Xing had been around, he might have been qualified to make such a call. However, as luck would have it, Hall Master Xing was not around either. If matters were to go awry, putting aside his position as a division head, he might even be stripped of his identity as a combat master. The Combat Master Hall wielded immense power, so it was of paramount importance that the utmost caution was taken in its mobilization. Otherwise, the Combat Master Hall would only be viewed as a threat by the regional power, and this would cause the leadership of the Master Teacher Pavilion to be questioned. Seeing that Division Head Ju was reluctant to make a move, Sun Qiong's face turned livid. "Since you aren't willing to save young Master Liu Yang, I'll think of a way myself." Leaving those words behind, Sun Qiong flung his sleeves furiously and left. After leaving Division Head Ju's residence, he headed straight to the accommodation that the Combat Master Hall had prepared for the Poison Masters. Benefactor. Upon seeing Sun Qiong, Elder Shu and the others from the Poison Hall hurriedly greeted him with grateful smiles on their faces. If not for the middle-aged man before them, they could have been tortured to death in King Zhongqing's hands. They also would not have been able to become upstanding combat masters, able to walk in the light without being shunned by others either. The other party had not only given them a second life, he had also changed their fate as well. UN. Actually, I have a matter that I require your help with. Without any hesitation, Sun Qiong dove straight to the topic at hand. With his current strength, there was no way he could barge into the royal palace single-handedly and save Liu Yang. Thus, he had to gather all the power he could tap into. For some inconceivable reason, these poison masters were extremely respectful to him, even going to the extent of pledging their loyalty to him again and again. As such, they were the first group that he thought of seeking help from. Benefactor, feel free to speak. As long as it's within our means, we'll have it accomplished regardless of the cost, the poison masters replied resoundingly without the slightest hint of hesitation in their voices. After cultivating the poison art that their founder had left for them, their cultivation had really improved by leaps and bounds. This was especially so for Elder Shu, who had recently made a breakthrough to Saint 3 Dan. The improvement in his cultivation was one thing, but more importantly, his comprehension and grasp over poison had also reached greater heights. As long as he had a sufficiently potent poison in hand, he would be able to kill even a primordial spirit realm expert easily. There's no need to agree to my request so quickly. You can make your decision after listening to their story. Sun Qiong was slightly surprised by the Poison Master's unhesitating response to his request, but knowing the dangers in this mission, he did not want to force them into it. It's like this. Young Master Liu Yang has been captured by the Emperor of Qingyuan Empire, so I would like to seek your help in saving him. Sun Qiong swiftly went through everything that he had heard from Chu Xiong. You want us to break into the Qingyuan royal palace to save Liu Gongzi? That dog of an emperor. I knew that he is a snake just by seeing how adamantly he protected King Zhongqing. To dare make a move against Liu Gongzi, that bastard is clearly disrespecting our great benefactor. Tell us, how do you want us to do it? Shall we have the entire Qingyuan royal palace poisoned to death? I think they at least deserve this much for their insolence. Sun Qiong's words induced an impassioned uproar amid the crowd from the poison hall. There was not a single word of refusal from them. Any matter concerning to their benefactor was more important than their own lives. Besides, they were not master teachers either, so rules and the sort meant very little to them. Good. Seeing the poison masters agreeing heartily to his request, Sun Qiong could not help but feel deeply touched inside. Ever since his first meeting with these poison masters, they had already treated him with the utmost respect. And now, they were even willing to brave such grave danger just to complete the task he had asked of them. This was probably what they call personal charisma. They were not even that respectful to someone as formidable as the young master, but they regarded him as if he was their savior. It seemed like his splendor and valiance had not gone unnoticed in the eyes of the world after all. Let's quickly discuss a strategy before making our move. Seeing the authority that he wielded amid the poison masters, Sun Qiong puffed his chest up and waved his hand grandly. Even though they had many poison masters on their side, one must not forget that they were going up against the royal family of a conferred empire. It would be a gross mistake if they thought that they could achieve victory just by charging over recklessly. If they did so, they could very well be subdued before they even got to Liu Yang. Thus, there was a need to strategize in advance. Back then, when King Zhongqing purged our poison hall, he did it in the middle of the night, when everyone was resting. Elder Shu narrowed his eyes menacingly. Even though he had already decided to submit to the Combat Master Hall, that did not mean that he could forgive the Qingyuan Empire royal family for destroying his home and purging his kin and friends. While King Zhongqing was the one who had supervised the operation, there was no way that Chu Tianxing, as the Emperor of Qingyuan Empire, would have been oblivious to it. In order to mobilize the troops required to destroy their poison hall, King Zhongqing had definitely received Chu Tianxing's approval. As such, the poison masters were also filled with hostility against Chu Tianxing as well. In consideration of the effort their benefactor had put into giving them a fresh start, they had been planning to put their grudges aside and live their lives in peace. However, seeing how even the bastard emperor dared to make a move against their benefactor, they could not hold themselves back anymore. A poison master stepped forward and said, "Back then, King Zhongqing gave us a lot of medicinal herbs to concoct the scattering breeze powder. Making a rough calculation, we have enough to concoct 10 whole tons of it. We refused to comply by King Zhongqing's orders to concoct the scattering breeze powder back then, but we still kept his medicinal herbs in our storage rings. In the past few days, we have been studying the new poison cultivation technique diligently, and we tried our hand at concocting the scattering breeze powder as well. The results were not too bad. We have managed to concoct a fair bit of it, and it all reached supreme grade. If you intend to break Liu Gongzi out of the royal palace, I think that we can use it." Scattering breeze powder? Supreme grade? Sun Qiong was confused. He knew nothing about poison at all, so naturally, that name did not ring a bell with him. However, as their benefactor, how could he possibly appear ignorant before the poison masters? Thus, he asked with a frown, "How much of it do you have?" The security of a conferred empire royal palace was bound to be extremely tight. In order for their operation to be successful, they would need to have a massive amount of poison on hand. "Benefactor, you don't have to worry about the quantity. We have almost 500 jin ready," the poison master replied with a chuckle. After learning the poison cultivation technique their founder had left for them, they had been wanting to find a way to put their newfound understanding of poison to the test. However, due to the lack of other medicinal herbs available, they could only concoct the scattering breeze powder. As a result, they had ended up concocting a large quantity of it. 500 jin? Sun Qiong's lips twitched in astonishment. Even if he did not have much of an understanding of poison, he could still roughly fathom the significance of 500 jin of poison. On average, just a few grams of poison was sufficient to kill a large group of experts, so 500 jin of it. He shuddered just imagining the sheer devastation it could bring. The scattering breeze powder is colorless and odorless, and it drifts along with the wind. As long as we scatter it throughout the royal palace in the middle of the night, we should be able to knock out the guards and successfully rescue Liu Gongzi, Elder Shu said. "Good, it's settled then. We'll move later tonight." Sun Qiong had never been one to fear anything. Since everything was ready, there was no reason to hesitate anymore. After refining various details of their plans and confirming once more that there were no major issues, they swiftly returned to their rooms to condition themselves for the imminent operation. Very soon, it was the Z hour. Under Sun Qiong's lead, the poison masters left the combat master hall quietly. As the poison masters had already been taken into the combat master hall, and they were moving under the lead of Zhong Xian's butler, the sentries of the combat master hall did not think much of their departure. Flitting through the night, they soon arrived at the side of the royal palace where the wind was blowing from. The group did encounter a few patrolling guards and sentries of the royal palace along the way, but they were all swiftly knocked out by the poison masters before they could manage to do anything. Elder Shu took a swift look around the area before confirming the ideal location. "All right, let's release the poison here. The wind isn't strong tonight, but as long as we release the poison from a high enough altitude, we should be able to cover the entire royal palace." Their goal was to deal with the Qingyuan royal family, and they had no intention of harming innocent civilians in the midst of their operation. Thus, they had to choose the location where they would release the poison from carefully as well. Yuan, the other poison masters, also nodded in agreement as they swiftly took their positions in the air. Hula! They scattered poison powder from their hands, and it dispersed into the night sky. The supreme scattering breeze powder drifted along with the night wind as it slowly descended upon the oblivious royal palace. While the royal palace was guarded by many formations, those were only activated in the face of an enemy assault. Not even the royal family of a conferred empire could afford to keep their defensive formations constantly activated. Not to mention, the scattering breeze powder could also seep through one's pores, making it nigh impossible to guard against. It was precisely due to the nature of this poison that the otherworldly demonic tribe managed to catch the Master-Teacher Pavilion and Combat Master Hall by surprise back then and lay claim to innumerable lives. A poison that could incapacitate even the wary combat master Hall. How could the sleeping royal palace possibly be able to withstand it? As the poison powder scattered further and further, the group gradually saw the guards of the royal palace losing consciousness and collapsing to the ground one after another. The scattering breeze powder only robbed a cultivator of their fighting prowess temporarily. It would not cause any significant damage to them. While the supreme scattering breeze powder boasted a greater potency, it would only increase its effective duration by several hours. Roughly 15 minutes later, Elder Shu roughly scanned the area with his spiritual perception before nodding. They have all passed out. It's time to strike. Let's go get that dog of an emperor now. That's right. Let's capture and castrate that dog of an emperor first. Sun Qiong uttered viciously as he gazed coldly upon the royal palace. 500 jin is roughly 250 kilograms. Z-hour refers to 2300-0100. Chapter 1229 Castrate that Emperor 2 inside the royal palace. Seated behind a table, Chu Tianxing gazed down on a kneeling black-robed man and asked impassively, "How is it? Has that fellow submitted yet?" The black-robed man clasped his fist and reported, "Your Majesty, even though that brat is young, he has quite the backbone. Our brothers have attempted to use all kinds of torture to pry open his mouth, but as if a mute, he simply won't talk." Backbone? Ha! I have seen plenty of people with backbone in my lifetime, but before me, whatever backbone they have will be shattered into smithereens. Chu Tianxing sneered coldly. "That's true, but Your Majesty, what do you want us to get out of him?" the black-robed man asked doubtfully. Chu Tianxing had only asked them to torture the young man to get him to talk, but he had not said exactly what he wanted to get out of the young man. Faced with such a bizarre order, he was not too sure how he should proceed. "You don't have to worry about it at the moment. You just have to torture him until whatever spirit he has in him is broken so that he submits unconditionally to me. As for the rest, I'll deal with it personally." Chu Tianxing waved his hand casually. "Yes, Your Majesty." The black-robed man nodded before taking his leave. As soon as the black-robed man departed from the hall, a vicious glint surfaced in Chu Tianxing's eyes. As long as he could get wear down Liu Yang's spirit, he would be able to use the soul art that Vicious had imparted to him to take the young man's soul hostage. By then, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. Rising from his throne, he began making his way out of the hall as well. However, soon after walking out of the entrance, he saw the black-robed man whom he had just spoken to a moment ago lying on the ground motionless, seemingly having passed out. Chu Tianxing's eyes widened in alarm as he began driving his zhenqi furiously. He was a half-leaving aperture realm expert, and the strength he wielded was no joke. Hula hula! Massive surges of zhenqi were pumped through his meridians, ready to bring death upon anyone who dared make a move against him. To be able to knock out his subordinate at the entrance of the main hall without alarming him, there was no doubt that the one who had made a move was a true expert. He warily scanned his surroundings as he walked over to his subordinate, intending to check on the wounds on the latter so that he would be able to verify the identity of the assailant through that. At this moment, however, a feeling of weakness abruptly consumed him, causing his body to stagger weakly. His eyes narrowed in alarm as he exclaimed, "This is supreme scattering breeze powder." This sensation was very familiar to him. It was the poison that the otherworldly demonic tribe had used for their invasion 20 years ago. Those who came into contact with the poison would immediately be consumed with a feeling of weakness, and even half-leaving aperture realm experts were not spared from it. This poison was the reason for his capture back then. He could still remember the excruciating torture that the Qingtian Emperor had put him through, and eventually, he had been left with no choice but to offer his soul to the latter and become the latter's puppet. "Fortunately, I still have the antidote with me," Chu Tianxing thought as he flicked his wrist to whip out a jade bottle. Suppressing the intense dizziness in his head, he popped out a pill and swiftly ate it. He was not like the combat masters, who could still move and battle on their sheer willpower even in the face of abnormal conditions. It was true that he was at half-leaving aperture realm, but that was actually the result of consuming countless precious medicinal herbs. In terms of true fighting prowess, he might not have been on par with an average primordial spirit realm pinnacle cultivator, let alone combat masters. The pill swiftly dissolved in his mouth before entering his bloodstream to course through his veins. He thought that he would swiftly recover his fighting prowess, but after waiting for some time, the feeling of weakness still did not subside. On the contrary, it seemed to be growing more and more powerful. It was as if he had consumed a fake antidote. What's going on? Chu Tianxing's face darkened. He had received the antidote from the Qingtian emperor himself. It should have made him impervious to the effects of the scattering breeze powder, so why would he still feel so powerless even after consuming it? Perplexed, Chu Tianxing was just about to pop out a few more pills to consume when he suddenly heard a cold voice behind him. Don't bother. The supreme scattering breeze powder was concocted using the poison cultivation technique we have learned from the founder. Its potency is at least 5 times stronger than the original, so the antidote you have won't work at all. Hearing those words, Chu Tianxing quickly turned his head around, only to see a bunch of bizarre-dressed individuals walking over. Elder Shu knew that this operation would have great implications, so he had all the poison masters switch into their normal clothing so as to indicate that they had conducted this operation in their capacity as individuals and not combat masters. Their supreme scattering breeze powder was concocted using the unique poison cultivation technique that their founder had imparted to them, which had enhanced its potency manyfold. This had rendered ordinary antidotes ineffective against it. If it was not for this, would they have dared to barge into the royal palace? You scoundrels! Do you know who you are standing before? How dare you assault me, the emperor of the Qingyuan Empire? Just on the ground of this crime itself, I can have you, as well as all of your kin, friends, and everyone related to you executed. Chu Tianxing bellowed furiously. But before he could finish his words, another furious voice had already interjected. Execute us? Try it then. Following which, Chu Tianxing suddenly saw a massive meatball charging in his direction. Peng! A fist struck his eye squarely, sent him flying headfirst into a pillar. The impact from the collision caused blood to bleed profusely down his face. You! Struggling weakly to his feet, Chu Tianxing shot a hostile glare at the fatty who had just made a move against him, only to pale upon recognizing the latter. You are Zhongshe's butler, Sun Qiong? It was due to abducting this fellow that King Zhongqing had nearly been killed. Chu Tianxing had conducted an investigation into Sun Qiong as well, allowing him to recognize the latter with just a look. That's right. It's me, your grandpa's son. Sun Qiong sneered coldly before turning to the elder beside him. Elder Shu, do you have a dagger? Here you go. Elder Shu obediently took out a dagger and passed it over to Sun Qiong as he asked doubtfully, Benefactor, what are you planning to do with it? This dog actually dared to capture Liu Yang. I'm going to castrate him to get even with him. Sun Qiong spat through gritted teeth. Castrate? The faces of Elder Shu and the others twitched. Everyone in the royal palace had only been knocked out temporarily. The supreme scattering breeze powder would not harm their cultivation or life at all. This was also their primary intention in hopes of minimizing the repercussions from the operation. This way, even if the master-teacher pavilion investigated the matter, they might at least still be able to justify their actions. As long as things did not get out of hand, Zhongshe would be able to clean up their mess once he returned. But if they castrated the emperor, that would really be a huge matter. That would be equivalent to attempting to assassinate on the emperor, and once news spread, not even Zhongshe would be able to cover them. Glaring at Chu Tianxing coldly, Sun Qing harumphed. Help me hold him tightly. If I don't make this dog pay the price for his actions, my surname won't be Sun. Ever since he had begun following the old master, he had never suffered such grievances before. First, King Zhongqing captured him for no reason, and now, Chu Tianxing even held Liu Yang hostage. The heck, did you really think that you can climb over our heads so easily? If I don't teach you a lesson, won't everyone think that they can bully us? Yes. A few poison masters rushed forward to hold down Chu Tianxing's limbs. Seeing that Sun Qiong was serious about the matter, Chu Tianxing's face turned ghastly pale, and he began screaming at the top of his lungs. What are you doing? I am the emperor of the Qingyuan Empire. You won't get away scot-free for doing this to me. You will pay with your lives. The master-teacher pavilion will never allow such an incident to pass. He was the emperor of a conferred empire, the man who dictated the fates of countless lives. There was no way he could withstand the humiliation of being castrated by another. Master-teacher pavilion? Humph. If the master-teacher pavilion was really interested in interfering in this matter, they would have long rid the world of a poisonous tumor like you. Sun Qiong harumphed coldly. Take off his pants. Heeding Sun Qiong's command, a poison master quickly rushed forward to pull down Chu Tianxing's pants. However, Elder Shu suddenly walked over at this moment and said, "Benefactor, let's not dirty our hands with his filthy blood. That would be a great discredit to you." Hearing Elder Shu pleading on his behalf, Chu Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief. It's indeed a little disgusting. Sun Qiong nodded as his movements came to a halt. What do you suggest we do then? It was only in the heat of the moment that he wanted to castrate Chu Tianxing. Elder Shu's words had brought rationality back to him, and he swiftly realized the possible implications of the matter. As such, he could only reluctantly drop the idea. How about this instead? Elder Shu hesitated for a moment before flicking out a jade bottle. He took out a pill from it and passed it Chu Tianxing. Eat it. Eat it. Staring at the pill in his hand, Chu Tianxing hesitated. However, the other poison masters were not as good-tempered as Elder Shu as to allow Chu Tianxing to take his time. They held Chu Tianxing's hand firmly and forced the pill into his mouth. Sun Qiong turned to Elder Shu and asked, "What is it?" "Benefactor, it's a kind of poison. Its consumption will cause it to drop off by itself without having the need for you to castrate him personally. Furthermore, the poison alters his genes to make it a permanent condition. In other words, even if he consumes the grand intermittence pill, he will still be unable to regrow it. Not only is this method cleaner, it also resolves the problem once and for all. Two birds with one stone, don't you agree?" Elder Shu said. "Drop off by itself." Chu Tianxing nearly blacked out upon hearing those words. He was just thanking the heavens a moment ago for having mercy on him when he was suddenly fed with such a vicious pill. Choked up with frustration, his face flushed crimson, and he spurted a mouthful of blood. Amid the uncontrollable shivering of his body, he felt an abrupt coldness in his lower body, as if something had really dropped off. My! Unable to take the trauma, Chu Tianxing's eyes rolled up, and he passed out on the spot. Wow, the poison sure is potent. Watching as Chu Tianxing's pants were dyed crimson by the fresh blood flowing from his crotch area, Sun Qiong could not help but direct a look of admiration toward Elder Shu. No wonder poison masters were so deeply feared on the master-teacher continent. Their means were truly fearsome, a living nightmare for all cultivators. Sun Qiong waved his hand impassively and instructed, "Wake him up and get Liu Yang's location out of him." "Yes." Two poison masters stepped forward to deal with Chu Tianxing, and it did not take too long for them to uncover Liu Yang's location from his mouth. The means of the poison masters were simply too frightening. The myriad of effects that their poisons had could have the most steadfast of minds crumbling in just a few moments, let alone a spoiled emperor. The group swiftly rushed over to the place where Chu Tianxing had pointed out, only to be found a feeble Liu Yang. He had been severely tortured to the point that it seemed like he was about to breathe his last. "Young Master Liu Yang." Sun Qiong quickly rushed forward to feed him a few recovery pills that Zhongxian had given him previously. Perhaps his previous capture had given Zhongxian a shock, but for fear that Sun Qiong and the others would find themselves faced with life-threatening situations in the future, he had decided to leave them with a few pills for in times of need. Even after consuming the pills, it took some time before Liu Yang regained his consciousness. When he saw the arrested Chu Tianxing held firmly by the poison masters, a burst of rage swiftly ignited within him, blazing into an inferno in an instant. He had truly thought that the other party had invited him out of goodwill, wanting to reconcile the differences he had with his teacher. Yet, from the start to the end, that fellow had been planning to hold him hostage to threaten his teacher. Unforgivable. Never in his life had he felt so enraged by anyone's action. "You bastard, I'll kill you." Roaring furiously, Liu Yang sent a kick straight toward Chu Tianxing. Pang! Chu Tianxing crashed forcefully into the wall, and the powerful impact had him coughing out huge mouthfuls of blood. These are the knuckle dusters you have given me. Allow me to return them to you right now. Putting on the knuckle dusters, Liu Yang charged up to Chu Tianxing and smashed his fist into the latter. Peng! Chu Tianxing's chest immediately sunk in. His ribcage had been shattered. Liu Yang raised his fist once more and sent another blow toward Chu Tianxing, and at that moment, Elder Shu's eyes suddenly narrowed in horror. This is bad. Chichi is dead. Dead. Taken aback, Liu Yang quickly took a closer look, only to see that a horrified look had been permanently plastered onto Chu Tianxing's face. Unknowingly, the latter had breathed his last. Things have really gone in the worst direction. Gazing at the dead emperor before their eyes, everyone's face paled. Even Sun Qiong could not help but stiffen at that sight. Chapter 1230 Flee. No matter how much of a dastard Chu Tianxing was, he was still the emperor of the Qingyuan Empire. They could teach him a lesson, they could place him in a state of living hell, but if they killed him, that would be a huge matter. This is really bad. Elder Shu was horrified by the situation as well. As much as he wanted to exact vengeance for his dead comrades, he knew that the death of an emperor would surely draw the intervention of the Master-Teacher Pavilion. None of them would be able to escape unscathed. Even if he was guilty of a crime, he should be put through an official trial of the Master-Teacher Pavilion before being sentenced. To kill an emperor of a conferred empire so abruptly was no different from challenging the self-determinism of the country. I'll take responsibility for what I have done. I am the one who killed him, so I'll bear the burden for doing so alone. Liu Yang clenched his fists tightly as he spoke. How do you want to take responsibility for it? Sun Qiong snapped. You aren't just an individual now. You represent the young master as well. Liu Yang fell silent. Indeed, even if he claimed that he was solely responsible for this matter, his teacher would still be inevitably implicated in this matter. From the moment he became his teacher's direct disciple, his fate had become intricately linked with his teacher's, not to be severed by anything. What do I do then? Liu Yang asked in panic. No matter how high his cultivation was, he was still only a 17-year-old child. He might have persevered through the pain and bore of cultivation, but he had no idea what he should do in a situation like this. I don't know either. Sun Qiong pinched his glabella in frustration. If only the old master was there, he would be able to use his strength and standing to resolve this issue easily. In fact, even if it was the young master, given his sharp wits and incredible means, he might be able to salvage the situation, too. But none of them were around at the moment, and in the face of such a hopeless situation, he had no idea what he could do either. There was no way they could suppress the news regarding the death of an emperor of a conferred empire. Unable to find a solution, Sun Qiong eventually sighed deeply and said, "Let's return to the combat master hall first and find a way to contact the young master." It seems like there's no other choice at this point, Elder Shu said. Elder Shu and the others knew that the young master of their benefactor was a 7-star master teacher who had successfully crashed the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. At this point, they could only bank on that young man. Thus, the group quickly departed from the royal palace and returned to the combat master hall. Shortly after they left, in a corner of the royal palace, a figure struggled for a while in an attempt to rise to his feet, but the overwhelming weakness he felt prevented him from making any large movements. This is really a huge matter. I must report this to the Master Teacher Pavilion as soon as possible. After recuperating for roughly 6 hours, the figure finally felt the effects of the poison dulling. He quickly rose to his feet and left the royal palace. It was already daybreak by the time he returned to the Master Teacher Pavilion. At this point, he had already changed his clothes. He was actually a 7-star master teacher. This was the man whom, under Zhongxian's advice, Wu Shi had dispatched to follow Chu Tianxing to keep a close eye on the latter's movement. He had concealed himself in the depths of the royal palace to find evidence of Chu Tianxing's wrongdoings, but who would have thought that he would end up witnessing Liu Yang's assassination of the emperor? To make things worse, he had not been able to move at all due to the poison, so he had been unable to stop them. Elder N, you are finally here. Songsha arrived early in the morning, and is currently fuming. As soon as the 7-star master teacher walked into the master teacher pavilion, Another master teacher quickly rushed up to report the matter to him. Songsha, elder, and frowned. He's the quasi-8-star master teacher from the Qianchong Empire Master Teacher Pavilion, dispatched by the headquarters when Pavilion Master Go reported the matter concerning Zhongsha's pavilion crashing back then, the master teacher explained. Quasi-8-star master teacher? Elder and narrowed his eyes in shock. There were 2 tiers in between 7-star master teacher and 8-star master teacher, namely half 8-star and quasi 8-star. Those whose cultivation had reached true leaving aperture realm would be qualified to attain the title of half 8-star master teacher, but only those who had reached leaving aperture realm pinnacle could be called a quasi 8-star master teacher. Since Song Shi was a quasi 8-star master teacher, there was no doubt that his cultivation had already reached leaving aperture realm pinnacle, just a step away from Saint Six Dan. Saint Six Dan was known as the Grand Dominion realm. At this cultivation realm, a cultivator would be able to create their own dominion, wielding absolute control over everything within its area. In other words, they were undefeatable within their own dominion. The master teacher nodded. That's right. He came at a timely moment. I should just report the matter to him and allow him to decide how it should be dealt with, Eldarin thought with a nod. The death of the monarch of the Qingyuan Empire was already a matter that had exceeded his jurisdiction. At times like this, it would be best for him to just report the matter and allow a senior master teacher to decide on a course of action. Following behind the master teacher, it did not take long for Eldarin to arrive at the main hall of the master teacher pavilion. Before he could even enter the room, he could already hear a displeased voice sounding from within. Pavilion Master Go, Vice Pavilion Master Tian, and so many 7-star master teachers have been killed, but instead of finding the murderer, all of you are idling around here instead. Have you all forgotten your responsibilities as master teachers, or have the years of loftiness made you all indolent fools? You lot are really reprehensible. It's really about time to reorganize your Qingyuan branch. Where's Wu Rufeng? Didn't Pavilion Master Go put him temporarily in charge? Where is he? Upon walking into the room, Eldarin saw an elder pacing around the room, reprimanding a group of elders from the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. That elder was probably Song Shi. On the other hand, the group of elders had their heads lowered humbly, not even daring to breathe loudly. The other party had arrived as an envoy dispatched from the headquarters, and he was a quasi 8-star master teacher at that. Who would dare talk back to him? Furthermore, his rage was justified. The Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion had 10,000 years of history behind it, but their Pavilion Master and Vice Pavilion Master had ended up dying abruptly along with 7 other 7-star master teachers. On top of that, a 20-year-old young man even managed to crash their pavilion. This was truly a great discredit to the reputation of the Master Teacher Pavilion. Vice Pavilion Master Wu is currently in seclusion, one of the elders replied. In seclusion? After such a huge mishap has occurred, as the person in charge of this Master Teacher Pavilion, he has the gall to go into seclusion? Upon hearing those words, Song Shi nearly erupted on the spot. To actually be able to go into seclusion when the branch was facing a huge crisis, was the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion filled with nothing but dimwits? Bring him to me right now. Also, get that Zhong Xian who crashed this Master Teacher Pavilion here as well. Song Shi flung his sleeves furiously and harumphed. You want us to bring Zhong Shi over too? Everything that has happened in your branch recently seems to be related to him. I want to see just what kind of formidable figure he is to be able to make a conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilion such a mess. Song Shi harumphed coldly. He had specially investigated the matter before coming over, and the conflict seemed to have originated from King Zhongqing capturing a butler named Sun Qiong. After which, the conflict had escalated further and further, eventually resulting in a pavilion crashing. To cause such a huge ruckus within just a couple of days after entering Qingyuan City, he really wanted to see just what kind of incredible figure that Zhong Xian was. Yes. An elder nodded before quickly leaving the room. At this point, Eldarin stepped forward and reported, Song Shi, I am Eldarin Rufang. I have a matter that I would like to report to you. I have heard of you. You are one of the more senior elders of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. Feel free to speak. Song Shi nodded. It's like this. Last night, the emperor of the Qingyuan Empire, Chu Tianxing, had one of Zhongshi's direct disciples, Liu Yang, imprisoned. Later in the night, his butler, Sun Qiong, led a group of remnants from the poison hall to the royal palace and poisoned all the guards there in order to save Liu Yang. In the midst of doing so, they even had Chu Tianxing killed. Elder and swiftly went through everything that he had witnessed. You said that they had Chu Tianxing killed? Chu Tianxing is dead. Songsha widened his eyes in shock. That's right. Elder and nodded grimly. Who's the one who made the killing move? Songsha asked anxiously. It's Zhongshi's direct disciple, Liu Yang. He killed Chu Tianxing with a single punch, Eldarin said. This. How could he kill the emperor of a conferred empire so easily? He's really taking our master-teacher pavilion too lightly. Songsha roared with a livid face. The master-teacher pavilion was in charge of maintaining order within the region so as to ensure peace for the populace. While that Zhongxian was admittedly an incredible genius, the Qingyuan Empire did not seem to have had a single day of peace ever since his arrival. In fact, his student even ended up killing the emperor. How was the master-teacher pavilion supposed to account for all of this to the populace? This was truly unforgivable. Bring Zhongxian and that direct disciple of his to me this very instant. Songsha spat through gritted teeth. Yes. Hearing Songsha's instructions, a group of elders immediately left the main hall. Not too long later, they returned with a fatty behind them. The fatty clasped his fist and introduced himself with an attitude that was neither too humble nor arrogant. Paying respects to Songsha. I am Zhongshi's butler, Sun Qiong. You are Sun Qiong? Songsha narrowed his eyes as he assessed the person before him. To be honest, rather than to pinpoint Zhongxian as the root of the entire string of trouble that had happened in Qingyuan City, it would be more accurately to say that it had all started with the fatty before him. That's right. Our young master happens to be out of Qingyuan City at the moment, Sun Qiong said. He isn't in Qingyuan City. Songsha's complexion turned even more awful. Young master and Wu Sha have left to apprehend the culprit behind Pavilion Master Go's death. In order to prevent the culprit from learning of their movements beforehand, they instructed us to maintain the act before others that they have gone into seclusion, Sun Qiong explained. He knew that the young master was not truly in seclusion, and considering that the elder standing before him was a master teacher dispatched from the headquarters, he knew that it would be best for him to report the truth. They have left to apprehend the culprit. Hearing those words, Songsha's expression finally alleviated. He then continued asking, where's Liu Yang then? It was understandable that Zhongsha was not around, but what about the culprit who had killed Emperor Chu Tianxing, Liu Yang? Why didn't he come here along with Zhongxian's butler? Sun Qiong hesitated for a moment before continuing. He has left Qingyuan City. I don't know where he is at the moment. You don't know where he is at the moment? What do you mean by that? As Songsha spoke, a powerful aura suddenly burst forth from him, causing the crowd to shudder involuntarily under the pressure he was emanating. Songsha glared at the fatty before him intently, seemingly daring him to utter the slightest word of falsehood before him. Sun Qiong was alarmed by the sudden outburst of power as well, but recalling that he was Yangsha's butler, he forcefully composed himself and replied, reporting to Songsha, after accidentally killing Emperor Chu Tianxing, Liu Yang felt extremely guilty at his actions, so he left Qingyuan City overnight discreetly. I honestly have no idea where he has headed off to. What he was saying was the truth. After returning to the Combat Master Hall, Sun Qiong had quickly consoled Liu Yang to calm him down before anxiously attempting to contact the young master. However, despite a night of trying, he was still unable to establish communications with Zhongxian. By the time he realized it, Liu Yang was no longer in the Combat Master Hall. He had left only a letter in his bedroom. He left Qingyuan City overnight? More like trying to flee from his crimes. Songsha's eyes narrowed menacingly as he instructed, comb through the entire city and have that murderer apprehended, dead or alive. Yes. A group of master teachers quickly left to carry out his orders. On the other hand, as a mere butler, you disregarded the laws of the country and brought your men into the royal palace to poison the guards. You are as guilty as Liu Yang. Men, throw Sun Qiong into the prison. I'll judge him along with Liu Yang once the latter is captured. Song Shi bellowed. A group of master teachers swiftly stepped forward to grab hold of Sun Qiong. You want to judge me and young master Liu Yang? Not expecting Song Shi to make such a decision, Sun Qiong's eyebrows shot up in displeasure. How dare you? Do you know who our old master is? Chapter 1231 Rise and Shine, like I would care who your old master is. In the face of the law, all beings are equal. Take this fellow away. Song Shi waved his hand impatiently, not giving Sun Qiong an opportunity to speak at all. Indignant, Sun Qiong wanted to argue, but a sudden surge of power had his cultivation completely sealed, preventing him from speaking a word. Following which, two master teachers stepped forward to have him taken away. Woo! Sun Qiong was so angry that he could have exploded, but he was still completely helpless before the situation. He was the butler of the great Yang Shi, so how could a mere quasi-8-star master teacher treat him in such a manner? This was insubordination. Have those poison masters captured too. Make sure to keep a tight watch over them so that they don't escape. Paying no heed to the furious fatty, Song Shi continuing issuing a series of instructions. Very soon, with the entire master-teacher pavilion mobilized, it did not take long for Elder Shu and the others to be apprehended and imprisoned. However, despite combing through the entire Qingyuan city, Liu Yang was nowhere to be seen. It was as if he had suddenly vanished from the world. There was not even the slightest trace of him to be found. Several hours earlier, back at the marshlands of the northern meadows, Zhongxian was staring at the massive face right before him calmly. Well, I have to admit that it's a brilliant idea to have Chu Tianxing invite Liu Yang to the royal palace to hold him hostage so as to threaten me. Just that, I am really curious as to know why someone as esteemed as Chu Tianxing would end up pledging loyalty to you. In truth, Zhongxian was not the only one who was intrigued by this matter. The other master teachers and combat masters were also puzzled by Chu Tianxing's betrayal. As an emperor of a conferred empire, Chu Tianxing was an individual who wielded great authority in his hands. However, the entire basis of his power was built upon humans, so it was deeply counterintuitive for him to betray humanity to side with the otherworldly demonic tribe. One must know that if the master-teacher pavilion uncovered his betrayal, he would be killed on the spot. There would be no mercy whatsoever. You want to know why? Hearing those words, Vicious sneered coldly. You will have to ask your own master-teacher pavilion for that. Zhongxian frowned but did not say anything. Vicious harumphed. As the monarch of a conferred empire, he should have wielded supreme power within his country. No one should have dared disrespect him or question his words. But with the existence of your master-teacher pavilion, what has become of his authority as the emperor? Thanks to your master-teacher pavilion, he has to always consider how the master-teacher pavilion would view a matter before making a decision. No matter what he did, he would never be able to break free from your control, doomed to remain subservient to you lot for life. How could a man as prideful and lofty as him possibly accept this? Through controlling this opening in his heart, it was not too difficult for me to place him under my control. Hearing that, Zhongxian fell silent. In truth, Vicious words had some truth in them. To the common populace, the presence of the master-teacher pavilion brought about some degree of equality and order, allowing them to live their lives in peace. It was also a platform where they could have their grievances redressed, allowing standing up against the powerful nobles of the country whom they would have been powerless against otherwise. On the other hand, to those who wielded great power, especially for those who donned the crown, the existence of the master-teacher pavilion was a major threat to their authority. No matter what they wanted to do, they had to take how the master-teacher pavilion would react into consideration, or else a swift sword might fall upon their heads. Naturally, how could they be pleased something like that? To have to remain subservient to another despite sitting upon the almighty throne. It was inevitable that dissatisfactions would pile up and eventually reach a point where it was no longer repressible. At this point, Zhongxian shook his head and sighed. Chu Tianxing only saw how his power had been curbed, but he failed to see how the Qingyuan Empire could have very well been annexed by other empires or destroyed by the otherworldly demonic tribe if not for the Master-Teacher Pavilion's protection. Without a strong foundation, how could an empire possibly survive the test of time? Despite the various restrictions that the Master-Teacher Pavilion would impose on the regional monarchy, there was no doubt that its presence played a crucial role in making the country strong. Nevertheless, even though Vicious had put it simply, Zhongxian knew that the truth was bound to be more complicated than that. Most likely, Chu Tianxing must have gone through some kind of traumatic event that resulted in him steering off the path, eventually causing inner demons to breed within him. Unable to overcome his inner demons, he had no choice but to become the puppet of the Qingtian Emperor and Vicious, heading down a path of no return. Not wishing to waste his breath any longer, Vicious uttered coldly, "All right, I have already come to the limit of my patience. I don't want to waste any more time on you. Hurry up and give me your answer, or else I'll ensure that you, your students, and your kin will suffer tragic death." At the same time, a powerful force suddenly rippled forth from Vicious, leaving Zhongxian's group swaying on their feet. It was a threat from Vicious to remind them how powerless they were before him. "You know, I do care for my students a lot. However, if you think that you can make me betray mankind and submit to the otherworldly demonic tribe just by holding them hostage, you are really taking me too lightly." Zhongxian shook his head as his voice resounded clearly amid the powerful wind. "As their teacher, I have to conduct myself properly so that I can become a good role model to them. If I surrender to you easily, what kind of message would I be sending to my other students? How could I be qualified to preach to them about principles and values if so? I know that I can't keep them under my wing and protect them forever, so I have worked hard to teach them everything that they might need, and if they are still to be unable to discern the situation themselves and end up being done in, I can only say that it isn't meant to be." As much as Zhongxian did not want to see anything happen to his students, as a teacher, he knew that he could not possibly protect them for life. More importantly, he understood the respect and admiration that his students had for him, and he was not oblivious to the immense influence that he had on them. For this very reason, he would not bend his principles and values even for their sake, or else he would be sending the wrong message to them, possibly leading them down the wrong path. Often, the consequences of a decision were ambiguous. It was easy to look back retrospectively to say what could have been better done, but it was not as easy when one was put into the same position, looking upon an uncertain future. Nevertheless, there were still some things that one should do and one should never do. Principles and values were what set humans apart from beasts, so those were things one should never compromise. This was what Zhongxian deeply believed in, and he felt that it was something that all master teachers should persist in as well. "Is that your answer? Very well. Since you have made up your mind, you can die now." Looking at the resolve in the young man's eyes, Vicious knew that there was nothing he could say or do that would sway the other party. Thus, he decided not to waste his breath anymore. Boom! An overwhelming might rippled forth from Vicious, crashing down upon the group like a tsunami. Standing at the very front of the group, Wu Shi and Hall Master Xing hurriedly drove their zhenqi furiously to reinforce the barrier they had put up to protect the others. However, under the immense pressure, it did not take long for their faces to redden, and fresh blood spurted from their mouths. The disparity in strength was simply too great. They did not stand a chance at all. Gritting his teeth furiously to persist even a second longer, Wu Shi bellowed desperately, "Principal Zhong, hurry up and leave. There's no need for that." A soft chuckle escaped from Zhongxian's mouth. "I know that he's biding his time, but who's to say that I'm not doing the same?" Raising his head, he gazed at the massive face before him and asked, "Do you think that you have one?" "What do you mean?" Realizing that the young man's eyes was calm, devoid of worry or fear, Vicious eyebrows shot up. An ominous feeling sprouted within him. He quickly looked back at everything that had happened, but there did not seem to any time when the young man could possibly have turned the tables on him. "What do I mean? Isn't the meaning obvious? Just as you were stalling time to gain control over the little island, I was also playing along with you to buy some time as well," Zhongxian replied with composure. Were it not to stall for time, even if he had many questions in his mind, he would not have bothered to talk so much at this critical moment. "You were buying time, too? Don't bother putting on a front before me, it's meaningless." We both know that there's nothing else you can do in this situation, Vicious replied coldly. The Qingtian Emperor had engaged countless celestial designers and blacksmiths and devoted countless precious resources in order to forge this head. While taking control of it had only granted him a cultivation realm of leaving aperture realm pinnacle, in terms of true fighting prowess, he could match even an average Grand Dominion realm expert easily. Of the cultivators before him, the two strongest ones were only at leaving aperture realm primary stage. On the other hand, while Zhongxian possessed strength far beyond his current cultivation realm, he was only barely able to match the leaving aperture realm advanced stage Qingtian Emperor even when he utilized all the means in his possession. The disparity in strength was not something that could be breached in a moment no matter how much time Zhongxian bought. The only fate possible for them was death. Why would I bother putting up a front before you at this moment? Alright, since it has come to this, it's time for me to show my hand as well. Haven't you rested long enough now? It's time to do your work. Zhongxian's voice echoed in the surroundings with a unique melody to it. Surprised by Zhongxian's words, Hall Master Xing and the others quickly looked around them, but beneath the starry night sky, there was not a figure to be seen. I was wondering what kind of formidable ally you could have prepared on your side. It seems like it's just a mere front after all. Vicious sneered coldly. Previously, that fellow had used this method once against the Qingtian Emperor, resulting in the impaling of the latter's bottom. If that fellow thought that the same trick could work twice, he was dreaming. If the other party really had an ally hidden in the shadows, he would have gotten them to appear long ago. There was no reason to have waited so long. I have had enough of your farce. Let's end it once and for all. Harumphed coldly, a compelling might far stronger than the previous ones rippled from Vicious, swiftly crushing its way down upon the group. However, before the might could reach them, the massive head in the air suddenly staggered. Following which, as if the little island had gone out of control, it began trembling non-stop. What is going on? How can I possibly lose control over this head? Vicious widened his eyes in horror. He shot his glance down upon Zhongxian and screeched, "You! It can only be you. Speak, what did you do to my head?" "It's nothing much, really. All I did was to enchant the little island," Zhongxian replied with a casual smile. Back when he was at the bottommost level of the little island, he had used the Library of Heaven's Path to check on the surrounding walls. Perhaps it was because he was at the very center of the little island, but he astonishingly found out that the entire island was actually a massive man-made structure, forming a gigantic entity by itself. Upon realizing that, he swiftly recalled what he had seen upon stepping on the ghost cavern and mentally traced the path he had walked. Once a full picture was formed in his mind, he immediately realized what was going on. Thus, he spent 2 hours in the underground cavern secretly enchanting the entire little island. His movements were very discreet, and Vicious Will was still trapped in the altar back then. As such, the latter had failed to realize what he was doing. After which, he released Vicious and allowed the latter to take control of the little island. From the start to the end, Zhongxian knew that Vicious was intentionally stalling for time, but he was more than happy to grant the latter all the time he wanted. After all, the more deeply fused Vicious was with the little island, the more intricately attached he would be with the dormant spirit that he had enchanted into it. Before Vicious knew it, there would already be two consciousness within him. Just like the situations with Hall Master Xing and Zhong Jiuxiao back then, he would be forced into a tough battle for supremacy with the spirit. Enchant? You are telling me that you enchanted my entire head? Vicious shrieked in disbelief. He was aware of the Spirit Awakener occupation, but even 9-star Spirit Awakeners were only capable of enchanting spirits into stronger and larger artifacts. Furthermore, each enchantment would exhaust them greatly, and they would have a long downtime after each enchantment session. On the other hand, the head that was forged for him was roughly 6 li in diameter. How many times would one have to enchant the head in order to produce enough sparks to bestow it with a spirit? Was it even humanly possible? It seems like the Qingtian Emperor has neglected to tell you about how I managed to enchant the building of the Spirit Awakener Guild, Zhongxian scoffed. Due to the previous incident, he had been afraid that Vicious might have noticed his plan in advance and guarded against the spirit. However, from the looks of it, It seemed like the latter was oblivious to it as well. While the Qingtian Emperor and Vicious appeared to be close allies on the surface, they had been trading blows with one another beneath calm waters. Information asymmetry could often prove to be a powerful weapon in crucial circumstances, so there was no way the Qingtian Emperor would have told Vicious everything he knew. This worked to Zhong Xian's advantage. Completely unguarded against his abnormal capability in spirit enchantment, Vicious could not have anticipated such a move. Otherwise, Zhong Xian would not have succeeded so easily. Humph, so what if you have managed to enchant my head? It makes no difference to the situation at all. I'll still be able to kill all of you easily. Roaring furiously, Vicious forcefully wrestled control over the head from the spirit and maneuvered the head to kill the young man before him. However, the young man simply shook his head with a derisive smile before uttering softly, "Rise and shine, spirit." Boom. Right after those words were spoken, it was as if spring had sprung upon the face-shaped little island. In literally the blink of an eye, countless plants sprouted out. Cactus, green foxtail, and flowers of all shapes and sizes. All of them sprouted on every inch of land on the little island, filling it densely. Under the forceful intervention from the spirit, Vicious consciousness began descending into chaos. As if two personas struggling for supremacy, he began to lose control over his own strength. Watching the inconceivable drama unfold before their eyes, Wu Shu, Hall Master Xing, and the others could not help but gulp in fear. All along, Spirit Awakeners had been a synonym for weakness, playing nothing more than an auxiliary role to other cultivators. Who would have thought that their aptitude could actually be used in such a way? Under normal circumstances, it would have been impossible for them to defeat this otherworldly demon. Yet, just by enchanting a spirit into the other party's head, Zhong Xian had actually managed to send the other party into a state disorientation, effectively incapacitating the other party. While struggling with the spirit within him, Vicious roared furiously, "Do you think that a mere spirit you have enchanted into my head will be able to defeat me? Dream on. Once I get rid of this spirit, it'll be your doomsday next." Zhong Xian's capability in spirit enchantment was unnatural, but Vicious' proficiency in soul arts was no joke either. At the very most, the spirit would only prevent Vicious from controlling the island and place his consciousness into a state of disorientation temporarily. With just some time, there was no doubt that Vicious would be able to eradicate the spirit. "I have no doubt that you have the ability to kill the spirit I have enchanted into your head. However," Zhong Xian shook his head before continuing, "it will be too late then." "Who?" A book materialized in Zhong Xian's palm. Vaguely, one could see a finger and a heart imprinted on it. Saint Sixtan Grand Dominion Realm. 3 km information asymmetry refers to situations where information is not fully shared known by those involved in the matter. One common example would be in a murder case, where each eyewitness knows some important details of the full story that others might not know of. In such a case, the detective has to gather all of their stories in order to deduce the full story and pinpoint the murderer. Chapter 1232 Possession. It was the Book of Heaven's Path, where he had sealed Vicious within. Vicious had once told him that the other Vicious was his brain and his eyes, and the innate authority the brain possessed allowed it to exert dominance over the other body parts. As such, it would have been impossible for him to possess the other party under normal circumstances. The only way he could successfully possess the other Vicious was when the other party's consciousness in a state of confusion, rendering the other party unable to counterattack to his possession. Considering how the other Vicious was a soul oracle who possessed the intact memories of the original Vicious, it could be said that it would be nigh impossible to place his consciousness into a state of confusion. However, upon learning that the little island was an artifact that the other Vicious was intending to use to house its will, the rest was easy. As long as he enchanted the little island in advance and put on a convincing act to have the other Vicious willingly fuse his consciousness into it. A single head with two consciousness clashing for supremacy, that was more than enough to disorientate the other Vicious consciousness. Admittedly, with the strength that the other Vicious wielded, it would not take too long for him to devour the spirit, but how could Zhong Xian give him the opportunity to do so? With an upward wave of his hand, The book in his palm gradually opened. The heart and finger sealed within the book surged into the sky. Boom! A powerful killing intent burst forth from the heart and the finger, shrouding the entire island in an instant. Why you? You actually have my other body parts. How could I have failed to sense them? Panic and disbelief could be heard in the voice of the other Vicious. At this point, he could not maintain his composure any longer. Under normal circumstances, as soon as the body parts came into his vicinity, he should have been able to notice them in an instant due to the connection among them. So how could those two body parts come so close to him without him noticing? Sense them. Zhongxian shook his head. Vicious heart and finger were sealed using his Book of Heaven's Path. Concealed by the heavens themselves, if Vicious could still sense their presence, wouldn't that mean that he had already surpassed the heavens? How could that possibly be? Who? Paying no heed to Vicious' shock, the consciousness within the heart and the finger flew out and dived into the massive head. Hualala. The head in the air was no longer able to maintain its steady flight, and it seemed as if it would plummet from the sky at any moment. Zhongxian turned around and told the group behind him, "Let's vacate the area first. It's likely that their battle will cause devastating destruction." The battle between the two Vicious for dominance was bound to be one that was extremely perilous. Even if they remained in the area, there was nothing they could do. In fact, they might even be placed in danger from the shockwaves of their clash. Since that was the case, they might as well leave the area for the time being and wait somewhere further away. All right. Wu Shi and the others nodded. Even though they still had not been able to make sense of the situation, considering that the pressure that had been weighing down on them previously had vanished, they were out of danger for the time being. The group hurriedly dashed away from the area, and after 10 minutes of travel, they finally stopped at an area roughly 200 li away from the ghost cavern. At this moment, the little island appeared to be nothing more than a small bean in everyone's eyes. Nevertheless, from the uncontrollable shaking of the little island, they could imagine the intense battle that was ongoing there. Unable to hold himself back any longer, Wu Shi turned around and asked, "Principal Zhong, what is happening? Why would the book that Zhongxian had taken out contain the will of an otherworldly demon? What did that otherworldly demon have to do with the Qingtian Emperor's teacher?" Everything felt like a perfect enigma to them, leaving them completely befuddled. The teacher of Qingtian Emperor is the fragmented will of a powerful otherworldly demon who fought on equal grounds with Kong Shi many years ago. He had already reached the level where he could revive even through just a single droplet of blood, and his death has resulted in many portions of his body being scattered around the world. I happened to find a few of his body parts and forced him to submit to me. Zhongxian briefly explained the situation. An otherworldly demon who fought on equal grounds with Kong Shi? Doesn't that mean that he's an existence who has survived through the ages? He's able to revive just from a single droplet of blood? The master teachers stared at one another as they felt their throats turning hoarse. Despite having encountered plenty of mystical affairs themselves, they dared not believe what Zhongxian was saying. It was simply too inconceivable. An old monster who had survived from the ancient times had actually ended up being tamed by Zhongxian. The group felt as if their minds were going to blow up. "I'll have to ask all of you not to speak of the matters that have happened here to anyone else," Zhongxian requested. No matter what, Vicious was still of the otherworldly demonic tribe. It would adversely affect his reputation and credibility as a master teacher if it was made known that he had an otherworldly demon under his command. Rest assured. Wu Shi and the others hurriedly nodded in agreement. To be honest, even if they wanted to speak of the matters that had happened that day, it was doubtful if others would be willing to believe their story. Battling with an expert who had rivaled Kong Shi many years ago, as well as that 3-kilometer large head. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed to be something that had come straight out from a fantasy novel, a figment of one's imagination. At this point, Zhong Zhouxiao suddenly asked hesitantly, "Zhongshi, are you really a celestial master teacher?" The others quickly turned their attention back to Zhongxian. They did not have any time to ask about the matter previously because their hands had been full dealing with the otherworldly demon. However, now that they were finally out of danger for the time being, they could not hold back their intrigue any longer. On the other hand, Zhongxian knew that there was not any point hiding it from them any longer. Without saying a word, he stepped forward. Hong Long Long. A unique aura emanated from his body. The faces of Zhong Jiuxiao and the others immediately paled. The aura was not particularly powerful, but there was a compelling pressure to it that rendered them powerless before it. It was as if they were standing before an existence far superior to them, and an urge to bow down to the other party and acknowledge his as their teacher welled up in them. You really are. The crowd clenched their fists with widened eyes. There was no doubt about it. This was a sensation that should only have been felt from Kongsha. It was a pressure that weighed on their soul directly, compelling them into submission. There was no way such an aura could possibly be feigned. I never would have thought that I would live to see a celestial master teacher with my own eyes. I actually went through so much together with a celestial master teacher. Other than Wu Shi, the other combat masters and master teachers trembled uncontrollably from the sheer agitation they felt. They had grown up listening to the legends of the only known celestial master teacher in the world, Kongsha, and they had never thought that they would ever meet a real celestial master teacher in their lifetime. Yet, unknowingly, they actually ended up venturing into a legendary expedition with one, braving through danger together. No wonder your impartation of heaven's will could win the hearts of several 10,000 master teachers all at once, making them willingly address you as their teacher, one of the master teacher pavilion elders remarked. He had been wondering how Zhongxian wielded such astounding capability as to make so many master teachers submit to him simultaneously, willingly addressing him as their teacher. However, if the other party was a celestial master teacher like Kongsha, everything would make sense. Putting aside making several 10,000 master teachers submit to him, he would not even be surprised if the other party made every single being in the world acknowledge him as their teacher. After all, the previous celestial master teacher eventually grew up to become an existence known as the world's teacher. On the other hand, Zhong Jiuxiao felt a stifling sensation in his chest as he lamented internally, how am I supposed to defeat a rival like that? All along, he had viewed Zhongxian as a hurdle that he would have to overcome, and he had deeply believed that with his talents, he would be able to do it as long as he worked diligently. However, from the looks of it now, it seemed like it was only wishful thinking on his part. It was no wonder he suffered such a tragic defeat. Considering that his opponent was a celestial master teacher, his defeat was inevitable. In that sense, his loss could not be considered an embarrassment. If Zhongshi is really a celestial master teacher, it's likely that his talent surpasses even that of the young prodigy of our Zhong clan. But the young prodigy has the full support of the Zhong clan behind him, having free access to top-notch cultivation resources from a very young age. I really wonder what will happen if the two of them clash with one another. Zhong Jiuxiao could not help but wonder. He had never met the young prodigy who boasted the purest bloodline of the Zhong clan in many years, but he had heard many rumors about the latter's superior talent and strength. He could not help but wonder how the latter would compare to the celestial master teacher standing before him. Would the young prodigy end up being traumatized to the point where he did not even want to live anymore? It would be interesting to watch them clash with one another one day. Zhong Jiuxiao pondered. Paying no heed to everyone's shock, Zhongxian looked at them grimly and said, I also hope that you won't speak a word about the matter concerning me being a celestial master teacher. The encounters in the Qingyuan Empire had taught him not to take the safety of the master teacher pavilion for granted. There was a good chance that there were more otherworldly demons hiding in their midst, and if the news regarding him being a celestial master teacher reached their ears, he might find himself being plunged into grave danger. Currently, he only possessed fighting prowess on par with a leaving Aperture Realm intermediate stage cultivator. Before the true top-notch experts on the master teacher continent, his strength was not even worth a mention. Before he acquired absolute strength that would allow him to stand indomitable in the world, it would be best for him to maintain a low profile. Principal Zhong, don't worry. We understand the graveness of the matter, so please rest assured that we'll keep our mouths sealed. Hall Master Xing replied. I swear on my name as a master teacher that if I speak a word of this matter, may vicious retribution fall upon me, one of the master teacher pavilion elders swore. With him taking the lead, the others also swiftly followed suit as well. I have troubled all of you. Zhongxian waved his hand before turning his gaze back to the fight in the distance. With the world cloaked in darkness, it would be difficult for even Saint Realm cultivators to spectate a sight from 200 li away. However, with his eye of insight, Zhongxian was able to perceive everything with clarity. The wills of both vicious were tangled with one another, fighting desperately to devour the other. While the vicious he had tamed was far weaker than the other vicious, the assistance of the enchanted spirit and the other vicious being spread too thin across the massive head had impaired the other vicious fighting prowess. As a result, both sides turned out to be equally matched for the time being. It seems like I need not worry. Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing the sight. The vicious he had tamed possessed the heart, the origin of power. As such, the longer the battle dragged on for, the more advantageous his position would be. On the other hand, while the head possessed the ability to control power, its ability to supply power was significantly weaker. Even though they were equal for the time being, the other vicious would gradually grow weaker and weaker before eventually being consumed once and for all. As Zhongxian had expected, an hour later, the battle finally began to die down. The movements of the face-shaped little island were gradually slowing to a halt, too. Wait here for a moment. I'll head over to take a look, Zhongxian said before heading forward. Zhongsha, I'll go with you. This way, I'll at least be able to cover you if anything happens, Wuxia quickly offered. There's no need for that. You'll only be a burden if you tag along. Zhongxian waved his hand casually before flying away swiftly. Wuxia. Master, as you have commanded, I have successfully eradicated him. Upon arriving before the face-shaped little island, a voice sounded in Zhongxian's mind. It was the vicious whom he had tamed. Good, good. Zhongxian nodded in approval. Vicious continued speaking. But while I have managed to eradicate his consciousness, I have suffered significant damage in the midst of doing so. I fear that I will need to hibernate for a period of time to recuperate. Previously, just by devouring the finger, he had needed to go into a lengthy sleep. Considering how the opponent this time around was far stronger than him, it was not too surprising that Vicious had to rest again. I understand. However, given your current size, how am I supposed to take you away? Zhongxian asked as he gestured toward the massive little island before him. Spanning a length of 3 kilometers from one end to the other, there was no way Zhongxian could fit it into his storage ring or the myriad ant-hive nests. Master, don't worry. I can continue hiding inside the Book of Heaven's Path. Right after saying those words, the island suddenly blurred from sight before materializing within the Book of Heaven's Path. This. Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. The Book of Heaven's Path actually had such an ability. Why didn't he know about it? Who? The Book of Heaven's Path fell back into Zhongxian's hands, and he flipped it open casually. In it, he saw a head, a heart, and a finger floating quietly within, reminiscent of a 3D painting. 100 kilometers. Chapter 1233. Returning to Qingyuan City. Zhongxian's eyes lit up. To think that the Book of Heaven's Path would be able to store such a huge island. As expected of a product of the Library of Heaven's Path, there was really no questioning its quality. Putting the Book of Heaven's Path back, Zhongxian returned to where Wuxia and the others were. Even though the trip to the marshlands of the northern meadows had been fraught with dangers, the returns had also been rather substantial. Putting aside the massive power-up that Vicious would receive upon his reawakening, just the 100 or so leaving Aperture Realm intermediate stage puppets that he had acquired would become a powerful fighting force for him. If he released all of them at once, even a Saint 6 Dan primary stage expert would be pummeled into the ground. More importantly, unlike the other otherworldly demon puppets that he had acquired previously, these puppets were the purely engineered works by celestial designers, so they did not carry the slightest aura of the otherworldly demonic tribe on them. As such, there were no issues with using them in public. Principal Zhong, where is that island? Wuxia and the others turned to look at Zhongxian curiously. Due to the great implications in this matter, I'm afraid that I can't tell you anything. Zhongxian shook his head apologetically. At this point, he did not feel like blatantly lying to Wuxia and the others, but it was not safe to speak of the existence of the Library of Heaven's Path to others. Thus, he decided to sidestep the topic instead. "All right then, we understand," the crowd replied understandingly. Even though they were curious, they knew that Zhongxian, as a celestial master teacher, was bound to have secrets of his own that would not be convenient for him to reveal to others. Thus, they reined in their curiosity and held themselves back. As the group headed out of the marshlands, Wu Shi asked, "Principal Zhong, should we report this matter to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters?" By now, the sun had already begun rising. It was truly a terrifying night filled with twists at every turn, but it was fortunate that they had survived it in the end. Zhongxian shook his head. It would be best not to. Since this matter concerned Vicious, the headquarters was bound to investigate the issue thoroughly. If they were to uncover the Book of Heaven's path in the midst of doing so, it would cause Zhongxian a great deal of trouble. Wu Shi hesitated for a moment before adding, "But if we don't report this matter to the headquarters, there's no way we can account for Pavilion Master Go and Tian Qing's death." Considering the number of casualties in the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion as a result of this issue, there was no way they could simply wrap up the investigation in such a slipshod manner. The headquarters would surely send men over to question them on the incident or even conduct an investigation themselves, and that could lead to more trouble then. "Is that so?" Zhongxian rubbed his glabella in frustration. If it was up to him, he would have preferred for this matter to pass quietly. Otherwise, his plan of maintaining a low profile would be shattered. Knowing Zhongxian's considerations, Wu Shi advised, "If we take the initiative to report to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, we'll be in a better position to decide the information to be passed on to them." As young as Zhongxian was, he had a very dependable and humble personality. He was able to see through the splendor and glory of being a celestial master teacher to understand the responsibility and risks that he carried before making the rational decision to conceal his identity and maintain a low profile. To be able to avoid getting complacent despite being in such a glorious position, he was truly a role model for all master teachers. Naturally, stirring a ruckus over this issue was not something that a person as humble as him would wish to see happening. However, this matter was simply too big, such that it was impossible for them to simply put it aside and disregard it anymore. If they were to take the initiative to report it, they could at least choose what information to filter out before sending it to the headquarters, and naturally, this would be to their advantage. "All right then." After a moment of thought, Zhongxian flicked his wrist, and 2 corpses appeared before him. "This is the corpse of the Qingtian Emperor. When you report the matter to the headquarters, just pin the blame for the entire incident on him." "The corpse of the Qingtian Emperor?" Wu Shi was bewildered by Zhongxian's words. Wasn't the Qingtian Emperor already dead? Why would another one pop out all of a sudden? Noticing the look of confusion on Wu Shi's face, Zhongxian swiftly explained the situation, but that only seemed to deepen the astonishment on Wu Shi's face. As expected of an otherworldly demon emperor who had lived for countless years, to actually have multiple clones under his command, it was really as if he was an indestructible cockroach. Honestly, just thinking about the opponent they had clashed with would leave Wu Shi's back drenched in fear. It was truly fortunate that they had Zhongxian with them, or else they might have died on the first encounter. "I'll report the matter concerning the Qingtian Emperor and the 10 kings of the Qingtian lineage to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters and have them make a judgment on the matter." Upon learning the full story, Wu Shi could also roughly guess what the young man's bottom line was. For some reason, it seemed like he was reluctant to have others learn of the matter concerning the little island turning into head, as well as the mastermind behind the Qingtian Emperor. While he was curious about the matter, he eventually decided against probing any further in. Yuan, seeing that Wu Shi had understood his intention, Zhongxian nodded. The important thing was to not have anyone learn of Vicious involvement in this affair. Other than that, everything else would be fine. It was really fortunate that the Qingtian Emperor had been involved in this matter as well, so they could use him as a cover to explain everything what had happened in the Qingyuan Empire. "I think it would be better to stop by our Northern Meadows city and report this matter at our Master Teacher Pavilion. We can apply for a holographic communication with the headquarters there and ensure that the appropriate information reaches them." Ji Shi suddenly interjected at this moment. "That would be great." Wu Shi's eyes lit up as he turned around to seek Zhongxian's opinion on the matter. Through the holographic communication, they would be able to present the corpse of the Qingtian emperor to them as well. Considering how huge the incident was, their report had to have ample evidence to back up their claims. Zhong Xian hesitated for a moment before replying. Wu Shi, you should follow Ji Shi to the Northern Meadows City Master Teacher Pavilion to explain the matter to the headquarters then. I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll be returning to Qingyuan City first. Even though Zhong Xian had put on a composed front when Vicious claimed that he had Liu Yang held hostage, the fact was that he was actually deeply apprehensive and unnerved within. He had long wanted to return to Qingyuan City to check on Liu Yang. While Liu Yang had no particularly outstanding talent, he was still a student who had followed him from the days when he was still in Tianxian Kingdom. A step at a time, they had come this far together. The year they had spent together had already forged an inseparable bond between the two of them. Knowing what Zhong Xian was worried over, Wu Shi nodded. Principal Zhong, I understand. Go ahead. It was roughly noon when they finally got out of the marshlands. Getting onto the aerial Saint Beast, they first flew over to the Northern Meadows City, where Wu Shi and the others alighted, before returning back to Qingyuan City. As soon as he was alone, Zhong Xian quickly dived into the myriad ant hive nest without any hesitation. Shortly after his entry, he heard a furious bellow within the myriad ant hive nest. You bastard, I'll kill you. Peng 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 peng. Following which, the sound of punches and kicks echoed in the air. Walking over to the origin of the sound, Zhong Xian saw his clone viciously pummeling the primordial spirit of the Qingtian emperor, not giving the latter an opportunity to recover at all. At this moment, the Qingtian emperor's primordial spirit was so faint that it seemed as if it would dissipate at any moment. However, his face remained as ferocious as ever, reflecting his strong desire to rip the duo before him into shreds. All right, stop your ruckus. Hold still and allow me to conduct a soul search, Zhong Xian uttered coldly as he drew out his soul and placed his palm on the Qingtian emperor's head. Tzzzzzzzz. Before the Qingtian emperor's horrified gaze, Zhong Xian sent a sliver of his will into the other party's consciousness. 2 hours later, Zhong Xian returned his soul to his body. Rubbing his glabella, he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. At this moment, the Qingtian emperor's consciousness had been completely shattered, leaving a mindless primordial spirit behind. Vicious has already gone into hibernation, so I'll leave this primordial spirit for you to assimilate, Zhong Xian told his clone. Vicious consciousness had already gone into a deep sleep before they could even get out of the marshlands, leaving Zhong Xian with a pile of unanswered questions. Since that was the case, it would be better to leave the Qingtian emperor's primordial spirit to his clone. It would be able to raise the latter's fighting prowess significantly. Roger that. Zhong Xian's clone replied happily as he dragged the mindless primordial spirit back into a room. Not too long later, a scream of agony sounded in the air. Shaking his head, Zhong Xian began to organize the memories that he had just obtained through his soul search. Regarding the matters concerning Vicious, it was mostly just as Vicious had described earlier. The reason the Qingtian emperor had obediently heeded Vicious' orders was to bide his time until the day he obtained the latter's full heritage and could take over the latter's body. On the other hand, the reason Vicious took in the Qingtian emperor as his disciple was to make use of the latter's strength to find his remaining body parts and make a full recovery. Despite working with one another, both had their own private intentions in mind. Through his soul search, Zhong Xian was able to acquire the soul cultivation techniques that Vicious had imparted to the Qingtian emperor. However, it seems like Vicious has only imparted the Saint 1 Dan to Saint 5 Dan soul cultivation techniques to him. Zhong Xian studied the soul cultivation techniques for a while before sighing deeply. I guess it isn't that easy for a soul oracle to convert their soul into a primordial spirit. A primordial spirit was basically an evolution of the embryonic soul, an existence made up of zhenqi and soul energy. It was also for this reason that it could exist outside the body, and it harnessed the strength to tap into zhenqi independently of the body as well. On the other hand, the souls of soul oracles were purely made of soul energy. Through utilizing unique soul cultivation techniques to enhance and temper their soul energy, a soul oracle was able to exert overwhelming might. As ordinary primordial spirits contained zhenqi, They had a more upright and orthodox air to them. On the other hand, due to the yin nature of soul energy, the souls of soul oracles emanated a cold and eerie aura, and they feared both sunlight and lightning. Fundamentally, primordial spirits and the souls of soul oracles were two completely different entities. As a result, it was extremely difficult for soul oracles to convert their souls into primordial spirit. On top of that, the overwhelming yin nature of their souls also made the leaving aperture ordeal an extremely high hurdle for them to overcome. As a result, despite the overwhelming benefits that soul oracles had earlier on, most of them ended up capping at quasi-leaving aperture realm, unable to advance any further. Out of 10,000 soul oracles, there might not even be one of them who would be able to clear the leaving aperture ordeal. In a sense, the Qingtian Emperor could be considered an incredible genius for successfully cultivating up to leaving aperture realm advanced stage. However, as I have cultivated the Heaven's Path soul art right from the start, my soul doesn't have any attribute. So, I shouldn't face a bottleneck from that. Aside from that, Zhongxian's soul had also been tempered by the Saint Ascension ordeal as well. As such, even though he was only at the embryonic soul realm, his soul already possessed resilience far superior to the primordial spirits of ordinary cultivators. The issue that most soul oracles would encounter was not a problem to him at all. After compiling the soul cultivation techniques that Vicious has left behind together with the Terpsichore, Spirit Awakener, and Demonic Tunist books, I have managed to compile the Saint 1 Dan to 4 Dan Heaven's Path soul arts successfully. I can cultivate the first 2 realms with high-tier spirit stones, but as for the remaining 2, it seems like I will have to gather more concentrated high-tier spirit stones before working on them, Zhongxian thought. Thinking back, roughly 10 days had passed since the friendly spar with the other Combat Master Halls. The rewards from the Combat Master Hall headquarters should have arrived by now, so the problem concerning the lack of concentrated high-tier spirit stones was not an issue for the time being. Thus, putting the matter aside for the moment, Zhongxian flicked his hand and released the puppets he had confiscated from Vicious back in the ghost cavern inside the myriad anthive nest. He had the inner demons leave them one by one before using his impartation of heaven's will to tame them. In less than 3 days, those fellows had already become his loyal subordinates. Leaving the myriad anthive nest, Zhongxian realized that he was still a distance away from Qingyuan City. Thus, he began going through the Qingtian Emperor's storage ring to see if he could find any treasures in it. To his disappointment, while there were quite some treasures in the storage ring, there were no concentrated high-tier spirit stones to be found. From the looks like it seemed like the Qingtian Emperor had most likely used any concentrated high-tier spirit stones he managed to acquire himself. Sighing deeply, Zhongxian decided to use the remaining time he had before arriving at Qingyuan City to browse through his books and cultivate. While Zhongxian was rushing back to Qingyuan City, Wu Shi and the others entered the Northern Meadows City Master Teacher Pavilion, and after a series of formalities, Ji Tianxiong placed his palm lightly upon a screen. A powerful aura slowly rippled from the screen as the silhouette of an elder gradually came into appearance. The head of the Empire Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion, 8-star Master Teacher He Xian, what has happened that would require you to establish a holographic communication with me? Chapter 1234 Public Execution. Reporting to Hall Master He, I am the Vice Head of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion, Wu Rufeng. Wu Shi quickly stepped forward to introduce himself. I know of you. Pavilion Master He nodded in response. Even though the Qingyuan Empire was the weakest among the 8 conferred empires subordinate to the Empire Alliance, it was considered an individual entity. As the head of the Empire Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion, it was his responsibility to have some understanding of the Master Teacher Pavilions directly subordinated to them. It's like this. We have uncovered the truth behind the deaths of Pavilion Master Go and Vice Pavilion Master Tian, and we have established this holographic communication in order to report the matter to you, Wu Shi said. Oh, you have already uncovered the truth? Tell me about it. Hearing those words, Pavilion Master his expression became grim. The death of the head of a Master Teacher Pavilion was a huge deal, so he had been keeping a close eye on the matter. However, despite dispatching Songshe, there still had not been any response yet. Ordinary communication jade tokens were only effective within a range of around 1,000,000 li. Any further than that would require a large communication formation. Song Shi had not activated a communication formation ever since arriving in Qingyuan City, so Pavilion Master he had no way of checking the progress of the investigation either. In truth, Vice Pavilion Master Tian was the incarnation of the will of the Emperor of the Qingtian lineage. Wu Shi swiftly told the story that he had prepared with beforehand. There was not much deviation from the truth, just that the aspects concerning the Qingtian Emperor's teacher had been intentionally left out. An otherworldly demon emperor has been hiding on the master-teacher continent for nearly 2,000 years, even successfully inserting a spy into the master-teacher pavilion, and no one noticed a thing. Pavilion Master he was clearly unable to believe what he had just heard. If this matter was leaked to the populace, the repercussions would be even greater than the deaths of 10 Pavilion Master Gos. This was a huge breach in the responsibility of the master-teacher pavilion. That's right. It's fortunate that we have managed to eradicate him under Zhong Shi's leadership, Wu Shi said as he flicked his wrist, and 2 corpses fell to the ground. These are the corpses of the Qingtian Emperor and his clone. Pavilion Master he quickly examined the corpses through the holographic image, and a grim expression set upon his face. That is indeed the corpse of an otherworldly demon emperor. Otherwise, there's no way he would be able to create such a powerful clone of himself. As the head of the Empire Alliance Master-Teacher Pavilion, he had a deep understanding of the otherworldly demonic tribe, and he knew that only those with the pure bloodline of an otherworldly demon emperor would be able to execute such a cloning technique. This was sufficient evidence to confirm the Qingtian Emperor's identity. Not only so, Wu Shi continued, Zhong Shi has also managed to slay the 10 kings of the Qingtian lineage single-handedly. To eradicate an entire otherworldly demonic tribe lineage single-handedly. Even though the Qingtian Emperor harnesses the weakest bloodline among the otherworldly demon emperors, it's still quite a formidable feat. Pavilion Master he nodded in approval. It's no wonder he was able to successfully crash the Qingyuan Empire Master-Teacher Pavilion. His talent and eye of discernment are indeed exceptional, perhaps even on par with some of the Sage clan offspring. Where is Zhong Shi at the moment? The Emperor of the Qingyuan Empire is a puppet of the Qingtian Emperor, and in order to blackmail Zhong Shi, he took one of Zhong Shi's direct disciples hostage. Thus, Zhong Shi is currently rushing back to rescue his student, Wu Shi explained. I see. That's a pity. Hearing that Zhong Shi was not around, Pavilion Master he sighed. To destroy the entire Qingtian lineage and foil their schemes to infiltrate mankind, sparing countless master teachers and innocent civilians from a tragic fate, Zhong Shi has really done mankind a huge merit this time around. In view of his contribution, I hereby grant him the position of honorary elder in our Empire Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion. Yes. Wu Shi clenched his fists in agitation as he nodded. While the position of honorary elder in the Empire Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion might appear to be an empty title, this position was actually associated with immense prestige and honor. Under normal circumstances, only real 8-star master teachers were qualified to assume the role of an elder in the Empire Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion, and yet, Zhong Shi was actually bestowed with it despite being a 7-star master teacher. Putting aside himself, even the head of the Qianchong conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilion would have to address Zhong Xian respectfully now. I'll have my men prepare the documents for the bestowment as soon as possible. By the time you all return to the Qingyuan Empire, activate the communication wall, and it should be ready, Pavilion Master he said with a smile. Thank you, Pavilion Master he. Wu Shi quickly clasped his fist and bowed. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Zhong Shi's accomplishments in killing the otherworldly demons and foiling their plans are a huge merit. In comparison to his deeds, the position of an honorary elder is really nothing at all. Wu Rufeng, you have also played a huge part in helping Zhong Shi accomplish his mission, so I shall officially appoint you as the head of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion right now. At the same time, I shall grant you an opportunity to come to the Empire Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion for an exchange. This. Thank you. Wu Shi could not help trembling in excitement. To him, becoming the head of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion was not a big deal. What was more important was the exchange at the Empire Alliance Master-Teacher Pavilion. This exchange consisted of receiving the personal guidance of a real 8-star master teacher, and this would surely be deeply beneficial to his cultivation and eye of discernment. This was an opportunity that countless would die to have. The reason Pavilion Master Go was unwilling to tolerate any problems prior to his retirement was in hopes that a clean record in his term of service would grant him such an opportunity as well. However, it was a pity that in his desire to maintain a clean record, he had neglected his responsibilities as a Pavilion Master. Thus, there was no way the Empire Alliance Master-Teacher Pavilion would grant such a precious opportunity to him. After dealing with Wu Shi, Pavilion Master, he turned to Hall Master Xing and the others and said, "As for the others, you have all bravely ventured into the marshlands of the Northern Meadows despite the overwhelming risks in order to eliminate the Qingtian Emperor. All of you have done mankind a huge merit as well, so rest assured that I'll have this matter reported to the Empire Alliance Combat Master Hall and have them reward you all handsomely." "Thank you, Pavilion Master He." Hall Master Xing and the others quickly clasped their fists and bowed. "All right. Send the corpse of the Qingtian Emperor over here as soon as possible. If we can examine his corpse carefully, we might be able to develop some countermeasures to deal with the otherworldly demon emperors, and that'll bolster our fighting force significantly," Pavilion Master he said with a wave of his hand. The otherworldly demon emperors would never venture out of the otherworldly battlefield easily in consideration of the perils they would face on the Master-Teacher continent. On top of that, every single one of them wielded many life preservation means, making it highly difficult to kill any one of them. Even the Empire Alliance Master-Teacher Pavilion did not have many corpses of otherworldly demon emperors that they could examine. "Yes, Pavilion Master He." Wu Shi nodded before making arrangements with Ji Shi to have the corpse delivered to the Empire Alliance. After which, with a respectful bow, he bade Pavilion Master He farewell. "All right, since we are done with our report, it's about time for us to return to Qingyuan City." Wu Shi and the others borrowed a saint beast from the Northern Meadows City Master-Teacher Pavilion before swiftly making their way back to Qingyuan City. After nearly 6 whole days of flight, the majestic infrastructure of the Qingyuan City was finally within view. On the way back, Zhongxian had received 2 messages from Sun Qiong. Firstly, they had headed to the royal palace to save Liu Yang. While they had managed to rescue Liu Yang, the latter had accidentally killed Chu Tianxing in a moment of rage. Secondly, Liu Yang had abruptly left Qingyuan City, and there was no one who knew where he was. Judging from the timing, it seems like Chu Tianxing was killed around the time that the will of the other vicious dissipated. Chu Tianxing was bound to the other vicious by a soul contract, so the death of the other vicious will would have resulted in his death too. Zhongxian swiftly deduced as soon as he received the messages. In a show of loyalty toward vicious, Chu Tianxing had offered his soul toward the other vicious to establish a soul contract between them. A soul contract bound the life of the contractor to the contractee, such that the death of the contractee would result in the death of the contractor. Naturally, when the other vicious died, Chu Tianxing lost his life as well. Thus, even though it was only a conjecture on Zhongxian's part, he had a feeling that Liu Yang did not actually kill Chu Tianxing. Rather, it was a coincidence that Chu Tianxing's soul dissipated at that moment, resulting in the death of his physical body. After all, even though Chu Tianxing was incapacitated at that moment, he was still a half-leaving aperture realm expert. It did not make sense for Liu Yang to be able to kill him with a single punch. If that was the case, Liu Yang and the others could only be convicted of unlawfully barging into the royal palace to cause trouble. With Zhongxian's influence from the successful pavilion crashing, he should be able to resolve the issue with ease. Just that. Why isn't Sun Qiong replying to my messages? Zhongxian frowned in worry. Even though the matter was not a big deal according to what he had seen so far, the problem was that Sun Qiong had not replied a single time to him despite sending 8 messages over the days. This left him worried that a mishap might have occurred. Furthermore, Liu Yang's disappearance had also left him feeling a little unnerved within. Many days had already passed, so had they found him yet? With a mind filled with doubts, Zhongxian finally arrived in the aerial space above Qingyuan City. He maneuvered the aerial Saint Beast to land at the accommodation that the Combat Master Hall had prepared for him. Principal Zhong, You have finally returned. As soon as Zhongxian landed, he saw Ruohuan Gongzi running over with a mix of anxiety and relief on his face. Noticing the peculiarity in Ruohuan Gongzi's expression, Zhongxian asked with a frown, "What's wrong?" "Something bad has happened," Ruohuan Gongzi exclaimed. Liu Yang's act of killing Emperor Chu Tianxing has caused an uproar throughout the Qingyuan Empire. In order to appease the crowd, a master teacher named Song Shi has ordered the public execution of Butler Sun and the other poison masters who participated in the raiding of the royal palace that day at noon. A public execution of Sun Qiong and the poison masters? Zhongxian's eyes narrowed in astonishment as his expression turned livid. He quickly glanced at the sky and noted that the sun was nearly directly overhead. It was nearing noon. In other words, Sun Qiong and the others could be executed at any moment. Yes. The entire Shenzhen faction has headed over to the square, intending to raid the execution platform. The only reason I stayed was to inform you of the matter as soon as you returned, Ruohuan Gongzi said anxiously. Raid the execution platform? Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. Those fellows sure were gutsy. The members of the Shenzhen faction did wield fighting prowess far surpassing that of their cultivation realm, but the problem was that their cultivation was still too low. Most of them were not even at half-saint yet, so how were they intending to stop the execution? They would be captured by the soldiers guarding the execution platform before they could start anything. Bring me to the square right now, Zhongxian bellowed authoritatively. There was no time to be lost. If those fearless fellows really started something, it would be difficult to resolve this matter peacefully anymore. Thus, Zhongxian grabbed Ruohuan Gongzi and swiftly made his way for the royal palace. While making his way over, he quickly had Ruohuan Gongzi fill him in on the details. Who is that Song Shi master teacher you spoke of earlier? How does he have the authority to order Sun Qiong's execution? Pretty much all of the master teachers in the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion were his students, and owing to their gratitude for his enlightenment, they would not execute Sun Qiong and the others recklessly without conducting a proper investigation of Chu Tianxing's death. Based on what we have gathered thus far, Song Shi is a quasi-8-star master teacher from the Qianchong Empire. As he is an envoy dispatched by the headquarters, the other master teachers have no choice but to heed his orders, Ruohuan Gongzi explained. He's from the Qianchong Empire? Zhongxian frowned. That's right. After Chu Tianxing's death, the officials, nobles, and even soldiers of the royal court have been crowding outside the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion, demanding justice for Chu Tianxing. Unable to withstand the pressure from the populace any longer, Song Shi eventually made this judgment, Ruohuan Gongzi said. Hearing those words, Zhongxian shook his head. Indeed. For the emperor of a conferred empire to be killed so easily, if the Master Teacher Pavilion was unable to give a proper explanation for the matter, wouldn't everyone start fearing for their own lives? Where's Liu Yang? Zhongxian asked grimly. After that raid on the royal palace, Liu Yang suddenly vanished. Song Shi had all the master teachers comb Qingyuan city and its vicinity, but they were still unable to find him. We have no idea where he went. In fact, we believe that the reason Song Shi intends to execute Butler Sun and the other poison masters is to force Liu Yang to appear. If they apprehend the culprit behind Chu Tianxing's death, they will at least be able to explain the matter to the Qingyuan Empire and restore some of the Master Teacher Pavilion's credibility, Ruohuan Gongzi explained. Yuan Zhongxian nodded. Chu Tianxing's death in the heavily fortified royal palace had most probably scared the nobles and the officials of the Qingyuan Empire, as this meant that Sun Qiong and the other poison masters could effectively bypass any defense and kill anyone they wanted, and there was nearly nothing they could do to prevent it. If they did not offer them a proper explanation, there was no way the other officials and nobles would let this matter rest. In fact, they might even start swaying public opinion against the Master Teacher Pavilion, and with the influence that they wielded, that could have proved troublesome. I can understand the difficult position that the Master Teacher Pavilion is in, but if they think that I will allow them to kill Sun Qiong and the others, over my dead body, Zhongxian uttered coldly. An honorary elder would basically be an elder in name but possesses no particular authority. The Qianchong Empire is the #1 conferred empire under the Empire Alliance, the place where the Sword Lagoon is located. Chapter 1235. Raiding the execution platform. In the square outside the royal palace, a huge crowd had gathered, numbering at least in the 100,000s. There was a towering platform at the very middle of the square, where Sun Qiong, Elder Shu, and the others were firmly held in a kneeling position. Their cultivation was sealed, preventing them from struggling free and escaping. Looking at the group atop the platform, Song Chao asked anxiously, "What should we do?" The members of the Shenshen faction had arrived early in the morning, but the guards protecting the execution platform were all Saint Realm experts. In fact, there were even primordial spirit realm elders from the Master Teacher Pavilion stationed in the area as well. Against such fighting power, putting aside saving Sun Qiong and the others, they would be subdued before they could even get close to the execution platform. "I don't know." For Butler Sun, Principal Zhong didn't even hesitate to cause an uproar in the King Zhongqing manner. "Given how highly Principal Zhong regards Butler Sun, if the latter is killed, I really can't imagine what kind of destruction Principal Zhong will bring upon Qingyuan City," Song Chao said with a deeply worried frown. He had become acquainted with Zhongxian back in the Myriad Kingdoms alliance, and he knew how protective the latter was of those around him. No matter what, Sun Qiong was Zhongxian's butler, and if he was killed just like that, Zhongxian would surely raise a storm. Perhaps, the entire Qingyuan city might even be wiped off the map. "Is there any word from the Combat Master Hall?" "They have received Principal Zhong's enlightenment, so they can be considered half-students to him. But why is it that none of them are here at this crucial moment?" a member of the Shenshen faction remarked furiously. They had been training with the combat masters over the past few days, and they had imparted many of their combat tricks and secret arts to them without any reservation. Yet, in their time of need, none of the combat masters were willing to help them raid the execution platform. Naturally, some members of the Shenshen faction was deeply unhappy at this matter. "We can't blame them for this either. I heard that a few of the division heads have visited the Master Teacher Pavilion to demand for Sun Qiong's release, only to end up being imprisoned by Songshe. On top of that, Songshe has even made an official order demanding that all combat masters remain within the Combat Master Hall, or else they will be punished for defying military orders." Song Chao shook his head and sighed deeply. Combat masters were considered the military of the Master Teacher Pavilion, and for them, there was nothing higher than a military order. Considering that this was an order coming from a quasi-8-star master teacher from the Chenchong Empire, not to mention that he was an envoy dispatched by the Empire Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion, no matter how indignant the combat masters were, they had no choice but to obey Songshe's orders. The sole responsibility of a soldier was to obey the orders of his superior, and this was the same for combat masters. Without the aid of the combat masters, it'll be nigh impossible for us to save Butler Sun and the others. The member of the Shenshen faction who had spoken earlier hesitated for a moment before closing his eyes in despair. With their cultivation realm, there was no way they could breach the defenses around the execution platform. It was truly a hopeless situation. "I know that, too. Raiding an execution platform is a severe crime. Regardless of whether we succeed or not, there's a good chance that we'll be stripped of our master teacher licenses, and perhaps, we might even be executed on the spot to serve as a warning to the others. It will be unreasonable of us to demand others to put their future on the line for our sake. We only have ourselves to count on," Songshe said grimly. Even if their raid ended in a failure, just their act of attempting to undermine the orders of a quasi-8-star master teacher was enough to warrant them the death penalty. The members of the Shenshen faction who had dared come to the square had come prepared to die. How could they expect the combat masters to risk their lives to save someone whom they hardly knew? They had no moral obligation to do so at all. At this point, a voice suddenly sounded behind the members of the Shenshen faction. "Who says that you only have yourselves to count on? Do you not consider us your brothers?" Alarmed, the members of the Shenshen faction hurriedly turned around, and they saw familiar faces appearing before their eyes. Xiao Qin, Shahao, Jiao Tan, Lu Jianling, Dong Rui. They were all combat masters of the Combat Master Hall. All in all, there were several thousand of them. "You. How did you all get here? Wasn't there a strict order against any combat master leaving the combat master hall? Song Chao asked worriedly. We did receive the orders, but those orders only apply to combat masters. From this moment on, we are no longer combat masters, Shi Hao explained with a smile. All of you are no longer combat masters? Song Chao widened his eyes in shock. At this point, he suddenly realized that none of the combat masters gathered there were dressed in their combat master robe. You are relinquishing your identities as combat masters? But. Song Chao clenched his fists tightly apprehensively. However, despite his worry about the combat masters, he could not help but feel a surge of warmth flowing into his heart. In the days that he had spent with the combat masters, he had come to learn how much their identity meant to them. It was their pride, their honor, and their calling. But to save Sun Qiong, they were willing to throw aside what they had worked for over many years. In a moment, the eyes of the members of the Shenshen faction turned red. As combat masters, we can't blatantly go against the orders of a superior. Otherwise, what would become of the credibility of the Combat Master Hall? We cannot allow the name of the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall to be sullied because of us. So, we had no choice but to abandon our identities. Shi Hao shook his head grimly. Jiao Tan also sighed deeply. Is this really worth going so far? Song Chao asked hoarsely. Zhongshe isn't just your principal, he's our teacher as well. Without him, we would not have been able to attain the current strength we possess. We never would have known that combat and battle techniques could be interpreted in such a manner as well. We were just mere strangers to him, and yet, he taught and guided all of us without any reservation. We are all deeply indebted to him, Qin Xiao said. So, how can we simply watch idly in his time of need? Indeed, Zhongshe is the most magnanimous person I have ever seen. To have met and learned from him is a true blessing from the heavens. Now that something has happened to his butler, there's no way we can stay out of this. You don't have to talk us out of this. Shi Hao patted Song Chao's shoulder. Unless you don't view us as your brothers. Taking a deep breath, Song Chao suppressed the overwhelming emotions he felt and replied, of course not. Indeed. Those who conducted themselves upright and properly were bound to find many people willing to stand up for them in times of need, let alone someone of Zhongshe's character. He could still remember the day when Zhongxian duped him of his spirit stones, and he had been so furious that he even wanted to kill the latter. But as he gradually spent more time with the latter, he came to realize that there was a lot more to him. Zhongxian might have his flaws, but he knew right from wrong, and he persisted in the principles that he believed in regardless of how dire the situation was. Unknowingly, he actually found himself becoming Zhongxian's loyal subordinate, willing to heed his orders and lay down his life for him. This was not just a question of personal charisma anymore. What was more important was his magnanimity and his outlook. For the sake of what he perceived to be the greater good, he was willing to put aside his personal interests and impart profound battle techniques to others unreservedly. Only a true teacher would have so many willing to stand up on his behalf and bleed for him. Since you regard us as your brothers, don't turn down our help. Alright, have you all thought about how you intend to raid the execution platform? Shi Hao asked. We'll back you up accordingly. Yuan, we have come up with a plan. Knowing that this was no time to chat, Song Chao swiftly got down to business. Later on, before the execution, there will be a reading of crimes first. I intend to make a move at that moment. We'll be trying to breach the defenses of the execution platform through the grand formation of myriad stars. We'll be facing primordial spirit realm experts later on, but with our sheer numbers, we might just be able to overwhelm them for a moment and buy sufficient time to free Butler Sun and the others. Grand formation of myriad stars. Indeed, that is the best collaborative formation to use in this situation. Shi Hao nodded in agreement. The grand formation of myriad stars was a formation often used by the military of empires. It served to combine the strength of an entire army together to launch a powerful assault toward a single target. The members of the Shenshen faction were not too powerful individually, most of them were about transcendent mortal 7 Dan to 8 Dan, but when the might of over 10,000 men was combined through the massive formation, They might just be able to put together enough strength to subdue even a primordial spirit realm expert. But, have you thought about how you will bring Butler Sun and the others out of Qingyuan City after rescuing them? Shahao asked. If there's no feasible escape route, they will only be captured again shortly after. That will render the rescue operation meaningless. Song Chao and the others fell silent. They knew that with the chances of success were extremely slim with their current strength, and they had already prepared themselves to lose their lives in the raid. As a result, they had not really thought too deeply about the follow-up after rescuing Sun Qiong and the others. However, now that the combat masters were backing them as well, there was a chance that they might just pull it off successfully. As such, they had to start thinking about a follow-up to the rescue operation, or else Sun Qiong and the others would just be recaptured soon after. Do you have an idea in mind? Song Chao asked Shahao. As a matter of fact, I do. My plan is rather simple. Instead of raiding the execution platform, we should find a way to hold Song She hostage. Shahao said. Hold Song She hostage? Song Chao widened his eyes in disbelief. Indeed. Song She is the key to everything that has happened. As long as we subdue him and have him take back his orders to execute Butler Sun and the others, we will be able to have Butler Sun and the others released. After that, we just have to hold him for a sufficient period of time for Butler Sun and the others to get out of Qingyuan City. Song Chao and the others contemplated for a moment before slowly nodding in agreement. That does sound like a feasible idea. It was solely based on Song She's command that Sun Qiong and the others were being executed. In other words, as long as Song She took back his orders, Sun Qiong and the others should be able to leave Qingyuan City safely. How do you intend to carry your plan out? We'll follow you. Seeing that Shahao had a better plan in mind, Song Chao and the others quickly turned their attention to Shahao. It's quite simple. Just move on my command later, Shahao said. However, before he could reveal his plan, a resounding voice suddenly echoed from the execution platform, instantly silencing the voices of the 100,000 men in the square. An elder floating above the execution platform gazed at the crowd beneath before speaking in an authoritative voice. I am Quasi 8-star Master Teacher Song Xian, Qianchong Empire Master Teacher Pavilion, Song She. Sun Qiong, along with his conspirators from the Poison Hall, raided the royal palace overnight, knocking out all of the guards with their poison before murdering Emperor Chu Tianxing. For the heinous crimes they have committed, I hereby decree that they are to be publicly executed. His Song She. Previously, they had not really thought much about the other party. However, upon feeling the unbelievably powerful aura that the other party emanated, Shahao and the others could not help but begin hesitating. A leaving aperture pinnacle expert could not be defeated by numbers alone. Song She scanned the surroundings, and unable to find the missing Liu Yang amid the crowd, a disdainful smile crept onto his lips as he harumphed coldly. It's noon. Carry out the execution. Huala. As those words were spoken, a huge execution blade rose into the air, preparing to fall upon the necks of Sun Qiong, Elder Shu, and the other poison masters. Seeing that it would be too late if they did not make a move right now, Shahao bellowed, now. Boom. Right after those words were spoken, countless surges of Zhenqi gathered together to form a massive dragon, and it charged with incredible momentum toward Song She in the air. This massive dragon had the strength of over 10,000 members of the Shenqian faction and several thousand combat masters. While their cultivation was not too high individually, they still posed a frightening force when their strengths were put together. The massive dragon seemed to tear right through space, appearing before Song She in an instant. You brazen scoundrels. Not expecting someone to actually raid the execution platform and even make a move on him, Song She's eyes immediately narrowed in fury. He raised his hand and pressed it forcefully downward. Huala. The sheer might of his palm strike froze the massive dragon in mid-air. As a leaving aperture realm expert, an existence just a step away from the Grand Dominion realm, Song She was no longer an opponent who could be defeated just by combining the strength of the masses. How dare you scoundrels raid the execution platform and assault a Quasi 8-star Master Teacher? I'll deal with you all personally after executing this bunch here. Execute them. After fending off the massive dragon, Song She sneered coldly as he raised his other hand. Wang. Countless execution blades immediately fell for the necks of Sun Qiong and the others. But, at the very last moment, the execution blades suddenly froze in midair. Following which, an ice-cold voice swept through the surroundings like a tornado, resounding loudly in everyone's ears. "You want to execute my men? Let me ask you, how many heads do you have?" Following which, a figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the square, gazing down on the execution platform as if a deity who had descended from the heavens. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.